What's going on, guys? I found some new music. A little more upbeat than my normal lo-fi stream beats. Welcome back, guys. Thank you very much for joining us again for day 2 of Microsoft Build 2020. We've got about 20 to 25 minutes until the actual show starts. But I wanted to jump on here, get everybody in, invite your friends, share the love, bring everybody in. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to go for about another 4 hours, roughly 3 to 4 hours. We got lots of stuff lined up today. More Scott Guthrie, more tech, some panel discussions, conversational stuff. All kinds of good stuff. These guys have been running, in case you weren't aware, sessions all night. Follow the sun around the globe. All night sessions have been going. They've been going non-stop. They deserve an immense amount of praise for the show that they've been putting on. As I was doing other things throughout last night, I was checking in on some of the sessions, and they're still going right now. You guys can see right here. I mean, they're still... Let me mute this so it doesn't come through. But I mean, they're still doing sessions right now. They haven't stopped. It's insane. So much content. So many announcements yesterday came out of Microsoft. I can't wait to sit down and digest all of it throughout the rest of the week. Write up a few posts and digest, make some videos, all kinds of stuff. This was an absolutely massive event. And Microsoft really pulled it off. So, let's see what else. Things that I'm very interested in. As I said yesterday, we had to run out of here pretty quick because I had to go do PT for the shoulder. But Microsoft Teams. Teams. They're coming after everything. Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, Discord, all of it. And they're going to win. They're going to win. Yeah, the announcement of Teams and NDI is massive. I hope they get it right this time instead of what they did in Skype, but to be determined. Preview is supposed to be available in June sometime, so I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that. You guys know how much I love and use NDI in my streams, so very, very much looking forward to what that's actually going to look like. If I can just have a Teams session and go into OBS and start pulling in NDI sources independent of each other. The problem with NDI and Skype is that all of the audio sources go over all of the other remote callers' audio channels as well. So if they fix that to where I can actually segment a caller or a participant's audio, video together as a separate thing in OBS, game over. Game changer. And it's implemented better than Skype. Yeah. Oh, big time. The guy that does the OBS NDI plugin is basically sitting there twiddling his thumbs because he has no control over it. So all he does is update. Every time there's a new set of NDI tools that comes out from New Tech, he just does a little bit of API updating, and he's done. There's not much to change for the plugin for OBS. It doesn't have to be Skype or Teams or anything. It can be any NDI source. You can have another computer or device or camera or anything on your network that is outputting broadcasting NDI, and your OBS session can pull it in. So I've been thinking about doing things like cameras. There's NDI cameras now that need no cabling. Stuff like that. Excuse me while I eat my apple before we get started. Kate, how are the music levels right now? Too loud, not loud enough, just right? You can't hear music. Maybe I turned it down too low. Really? Well, I mean, it's between songs right now. Maybe I turned it down too low. Let me know if that's too loud, Ian. Trying to eat my lunch before we do this for the next 4 hours. Yeah, very weird. It's loud as hell in my ears. I'm wondering if it's, some of you are telling me you can hear the music, some of you can't, but you're all watching the same stream. Interesting. Okay. I was trying an experiment with some other stuff. Huh. You install Power Toys, Carlos? Is that the power platform thing with Teams? I'm that's one of the biggest thing I'm interested in is Power Platform from yesterday. So, yeah, that's one of my biggest things that I'm really got my attention yesterday. I was even in my Teams session. And I went down here to the apps, and you can look at all of the different bots and apps in it like this. The last time I looked at this was probably 8 months ago. Holy smokes, has it grown. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Like, I could lose a full week just playing around in the apps available for Teams. And the smart thing is it's mostly geared towards enterprise, where we use our Discord community to talk about tech and gaming and, external stuff. I mean, my only feedback for Teams that I have is having to switch all the different organizations. And, like, one of the things I love about Discord is that I've got all my servers and all my different communities in a channel strip on the left-hand side, and like a blade, and then on the other, right next to it, there's the channels of the server I'm currently in. And I can just toggle between them with one mouse click. In Teams, you got to go up here, you got to change your organization, you got to click through so much stuff, and then you got to re-authenticate, and They got to streamline that a little bit more. Really do. So yeah, we'll get my teams off the screen here. All right, so we got to be getting close. Let me turn the music off here, and then we're gonna start listening in to what they got going on. I'll just mute that, and let's unmute this one.
That is correct. And good morning to those of you just waking up with us here in the States. We're happy to be kicking off day 2 of Microsoft Build Digital 2020. I'm going to say it right.
At least once.
Here we go, guys.
Once. We've got so much
Welcome
in store
aboard.
on this
Thanks
feed,
for joining us for
but
day
we've also
2.
got things happening in our
We've got Seth
zona
starting us off here, and we got about
I'm trying to make
15
this
minutes
like
or
a
so until
novella.
the
It is.
actual
It's
show
not working
starts at 12:45 Eastern,
Yeah.
9:45
student zone.
Pacific. So if you need to
so
grab a
first of
drink,
all,
quick
can we
bio
talk
break,
about how the
snack,
student
sandwich,
zone is
lunch,
not
any of
just
that
for
kind of
students.
stuff,
It's good for
do so
learners of
now
all
because you got about 15
ages
minutes.
and for all walks of life. So if you're a beginner and you're wondering what we're even talking about half the time, the student zone's a great place to start. It's the ideal content where you can learn with and from upcoming developers such as yourselves, and you learn subjects like Minecraft, Azure, and Power Platform, which is a great tool for people to start off with. You can also catch up with some dev favorites from Twitch and even NASA. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. So the way to actually access the Student Zone, head to the session scheduler, MyBuild, see the link, mybuild.microsoft.com, and put together your custom student sessions.
Speaking of leveling up, think you've got what it takes to take part in the Microsoft Build Cloud Skills Challenge?
You said it.
That is really hard to say. Microsoft Build Cloud Skills Challenge. Now is the time to head over to Microsoft Learn for more information about what modules to complete and what prizes you can win with nearly 50K they put. I don't know what denomination.
$1,000.
This is a global event, so I want to make sure. 50K in prizes up for grabs. It's definitely something.
Yeah,
to
you do,
check
Kate.
out.
Thank you. I had to check it on my phone too, just
By
to be sure.
doing this,
Everything
you'll
sounds
be helping
good.
support Microsoft. You'll be helping Microsoft support some of our incredible nonprofit partners, and these are the people who we've been talking about throughout the conference. Every collection you complete will help us distribute $100,000 in donations across Code.org, best org, Doctors Without Borders.
Hold on. Le Médecins Sans Frontières en français.
Look at that. Very good.
I got it.
NetHope, UNICEF, and the Nature Conservancy. Learn skills, earn prizes, make the world a better place, and do the thing.
That is right. And if you didn't get a chance to check out our Community Connections on day 1, today is the day to find out more about what they've got in store. We've got live and interactive panels with teams from Microsoft, like, well, Teams.
Teams.
And Azure.
Teams.
Get your questions answered, even work one-on-one with experts on your specific questions and projects. You should totally do that.
Yeah, you should totally do that. Okay, so day 1 community connections, right? So one of the coolest things about having this online conference is people actually went off and formed their own community groups, just like they would at Build. They're like, hey, we're gonna just make our own roundtable over here. And I don't know if you got a chance to drop in and check on some of them, but
did not.
there was
I
like
need to.
whole group of students discussing really interesting things. Shout out to Chloe and April, Chloe Condon and April Sprate, who are doing a bunch of stuff with Misty robots, dueling robots in the student
I
zone.
am missing out.
Yes. So that's pretty cool. Power Africa team, good job. They had a whole meetup this morning on their own, talking about what it means to have digital events for Africa, with Africa, and you've given us a ton of things to think about. And by the way, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our friends who are weirdly actually following the sun, have been awake for, 30 hours in India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Malaysia. Hello, friends. Thank you for being so enthusiastic. We've been getting your tweets and your comments in the stream since yesterday at this time for 24 hours. So thank you for your passion, your enthusiasm, and your love. That keeps us energized and that keeps us going. We appreciate you so much.
The thing that has been cool for me is literally watching the stream and seeing people from all around the world with technology. I've just been tuning in every once in a while because I was like, hey, kids, look what I did. They're like, Dad, we don't care. This is boring.
Oh, yeah. But it's not.
Sad panda for a second.
Oh.
Here, close up on the sad panda. Which camera?
Oh.
There I am.
That's a really, oh wow. That's actually sad panda.
But then I did not show him the Amanda Silver stuff on May Code. that, you see, I was just showing them the wrong thing, I think.
You should have showed them the make code thing.
I'm going to go home and do it today.
Yeah, you should.
Because that was probably one of my favorite things that I've seen. And in fact, we're going to have a follow-on from what Amanda Silver did, talking about IntelliCode later on with Mark Wilson Thomas, which is going to be great.
Oh.
He's going to be talking to me. I'm going to have a
Carlos,
panel on
you're
AI.
talking.
We're gonna
Power
talk about
Toys. Yes, I remember Power Toys. Absolutely.
She loves C++.
I know what you're referring
so
to
we've
now.
got a ton of things. Make sure you get your schedule up to date because there's a lot of things to be able to do today. And we've only just done the first 24 hours.
That's right.
Plus or minus.
There's a whole another 24 hours.
That is right. So make sure that you sign up for those things. Also, if you are watching, make sure to use the hashtag MSBuild. We have the social thing right up in here. It's been really cool. Like every once in a while I tweet, I'm like, hello, Sydney, or hello, UK. Respond, I want to talk to you. So make sure you get those in. I have my tweet machine. Is that what these are called?
Yes.
Like all it does is
That's all.
Twitter.
Yes.
And so I'm pretty excited to hear from you.
Tweet
so
machine.
make sure that you tweet at us. Use hashtag MSBuild. Can you use hashtag in the new things? There's like a new social, is it called Flim Flam or?
There's a new thing. Is this TikTok?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the one.
Yes, but don't use it.
Okay, don't use it.
No.
Is it just creepy if
No,
I show up?
it's just, you should use other forms of communication. Yes.
Like pigeon?
Yes. Yes, that might be
Smoke
fine.
signals. I like fires.
That might be okay.
I might have revealed.
Oh, speaking of segments that everyone should watch, James Phillips has this fantastic Power Platform for devs. So all of you devs who think Power Platform is not for you, this entire segment is about how to open Visual Studio, do cool stuff, and then have Power Platform do the work you don't really like to do, like make UI for you. So he's got a lineup of really, really fantastic speakers doing demos that you have not seen before. They involve mixed reality, and AI and a whole bunch of other cool things talking about, and these are all real examples. The Power Platform team did a whole bunch of work with all these local hospitals and government organizations to create apps and portals and demos to solve specific problems. So as you all saw the Swedish demo yesterday, but there's about 7 other things. And there is a very, very interesting mixed reality demo around one of the healthcare orgs that you should check out.
Hey now, I sometimes I razz her about Power Apps, but whenever I want to solve something and I'm like, I know I can code this, but ain't nobody got time for that.
No.
Yeah.
I just like,
Yeah.
I think that's the sound I literally make when I.
Do you make that noise?
That's my Power Apps coding
That's
sound.
his Power Apps coding sound.
And then I just, like, for example, I had to do something for, like, I have an AI show. If
Yeah.
you want to go, it's on Channel 9. I talked to a lot of people on our AI show, and I need to get a way to schedule them.
Yes.
And I was like, I could write it, but I actually made a form
Yes.
and then a logic app,
Yes.
and then it put it into Planner.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was done.
And it's magic.
It's magic.
Yeah.
I literally teared up.
Seth and
my
Scott with their
mascara
noises.
ran all
Oh,
over
man.
my face. It was terrible.
How does Seth even survive on a day-to-day like this?
It's just something. So the other thing I want to tell everybody about is make sure if you're seeing a register button, I think, is it going to be on this side? Somewhere out of this box.
Register or sign in.
Make sure you do that. The reason why is because it gives you access to all of the sessions that are happening at all times, and it allows you to converse with other like-minded people that are in that conversation. For example, if there's a talk on C#, you don't want people asking like, is this a music session?
All right, guys, time check. We're about 5
you
minutes
ask
away
that?
from the start of the show.
might have.
Everybody
Okay.
do me a
Yeah,
favor. Get up and grab a quick stretch.
I was trying to be a bad example.
Stretch your legs out a little bit, bend
But now
over, stretch
everybody-
your back
Mads
a little
loved
bit,
you
move
for that.
around.
He
We're
was
going to be sitting here for a few
definitely-
hours, so
Yeah.
grab a
Mads.
drink, quick bio break if you need to.
You didn't
They're
just
going to
say
wrap
that.
for about 5 more minutes.
He did it. He just
But
said it.
you got
He
about
just said
5
it.
minute
Sorry,
break.
sorry, Mads. If you're watching,
5 minute heads up before
hope
the
I
show
didn't make you.
actually gets started here. So
don't say it again.
Take the opportunity, grab a drink, grab
Okay,
a snack.
so everyone, actually
take a
though,
stretch,
actual
take a
news.
bio.
We are
Mads.
going
We'll
to
get started here in a minute.
he's
I'm
doing
going to do the same. So. Oh.
Is everyone seeing this? This is what I deal with. This is what I deal with. Every day, not just
It's
during
been 24 hours. I might not have slept enough.
By the way, today we have a series of 15-minute interviews with a whole bunch of very interesting devs who you'll want to hear from. So I've got 2 sessions with 2 engineers from the Graph team,
Hey now.
Nicola and Beth, and they're both going to talk about the latest and greatest in the Graph framework and the Graph APIs and the Graph Toolkit. If you've never used the Graph Toolkit, it is so sweet. I'm just learning a lot about all of the ways the Graph connects to things. You get so much stuff for free.
Yes.
It's kind of wild how
Yes.
much stuff you get for free. Yeah.
I looked at it one time and I was like, it's too much information.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Power Apps and was like,
So I'm determined to do a graph meets Power Apps, mashup situation, but I'm going to talk to two people from the graph team and, pick their brain for free here in front of all of you to do that. By the way, do you
Yes.
know we're going to have self-driving cars in here today? He didn't know that.
it didn't, your stream didn't freeze.
No.
That's just
That's just
me.
his face. Yeah. So I will be interviewing one of Microsoft for Startups, awesome startups called Optimus Ride, and they're going to be talking about how
Optimus
their
Ride.
autonomous vehicle startup.
Hold on, you went too fast.
I know.
Optimus?
Ride.
Hold on.
Yeah.
In the beginning, there were the Autobots.
Yep.
Stop frozen. Hold
I
on.
know.
Okay,
That's cool.
okay, Seth,
I know.
that's enough.
So we'll be talking to the self-driving car folks from Optimus Ride about how they have turned their technology into being a delivery vehicle for food delivery during the COVID crisis. How wild is that? I know.
That's like two things.
I know.
Like my food and AI at the
Yes,
same time.
exactly. Yeah. I like how you didn't know about these people.
Ugh.
By the way, Microsoft for Startups, if any of you have a B2B startup and you've made some traction and you have a product that's viable-ish and you think it's got potential, you've got customers, go check out the Microsoft for Startups site and sign up to see if you can join the program.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic program. You get a whole bunch of stuff. You get Azure credits and Office credits and Power Platform for a year, just saying. And you also get a ton of mentorship from the team. I learned last year that the Microsoft for Startups team is consisted of a whole bunch of people who used to be the CTOs of their own company.
Yes, no, and not just like
No.
amazing people.
Yeah.
Like Duncan is one of.
That's right.
Just like
Duncan,
amazing.
Andrew, hello Andrew in Australia,
Hello.
Duncan, all of these CTOs, they actually know how to run a small company and grow it to be big. So
That's
you
pretty
get
cool.
a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. Simona, who is the host all night, she actually does a lot of work with the Microsoft for Startups team. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check out Microsoft for Startups.
Absolutely, and
a
later
little
on
volume.
today, if you're wondering, if you saw
Good.
all of that amazing stuff with code spaces, we're going to do that a little bit more too. So make sure you stay tuned for that.
Perfect. So next up, do we have key segments and such
3
this
minutes.
morning?
Oh,
I'm
3
pretty
minute
sure we
warning.
do.
Here we go.
Okay, so we've got our first key segments of the day. First up, we've got Kevin Scott talking about some really, really relevant things in this day and age.
He usually talks about AI stuff, so I'm actually excited to see. We don't get to see a lot of these things
Yeah.
beforehand, and so we're
That's right.
experiencing it.
For the
If
first
you see
time.
me bring in like a blue card with
Yeah.
notes, it's because I was like watching,
Yeah.
and it was pretty good.
Amazed.
And so
We
again,
are.
now, please use hashtag MSBuild.
Yes.
We're going to get to the tag board
Ooh, tag board.
sometime today. We've got a lot of tweets. I am not going to break it today.
Ah,
So
Let's do tag. All right, so
let's
they tell
go
me.
see the tag
Let's
board.
go see
I
the
wanna
tag
see
board.
the tag board.
I'm gonna F11 here. Hold on.
I want to go see it. I
I'm gonna
have
read
to see the board.
Go over there.
I don't even know if we're supposed to wander around the studio like this, but whatever. We're doing it.
You got a little close to me for a second, but I was okay with it.
Did you see that? All right.
All right, what do we
What do
got?
we got?
Going
Oh,
on
look,
over here?
see, speaking of the graph, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to let Seth click on these. Hi, Chirag. Hello.
This is called killing
thank you
dead
for
air,
pointing
by
out
the
all
way.
of this new stuff in the graph, in the Microsoft graph. We're going to learn a lot about this today from Beth Pan and Nicola on their team. So,
Nice.
Okay.
hello
okay.
and welcome.
What do we got
Oof,
going
I
on over
clicked on
here?
Sancho. So Sancho is our Power Platform community member. Hi, Sancho. He's in the UK. He makes the most beautiful apps I have ever
I
seen.
love the kids
By the
sneaking
way,
in.
he was the one yesterday who was able to break the code on Satya's desk. You know that weird number series above his shoulder, and everyone's like, what is that? Sancho figured it out and got an article in TechCrunch. Good job, Sancho.
Wow.
Hey,
I'm
yo.
sorry. I should stop clicking on this.
No,
'cause
you
I keep
should-
breaking it.
No, you
Do I
should-
break it?
No, we could all look at it. Okay, look, someone
Oh,
is ready for day 2. You asked for pet pictures.
Wow.
This is close.
this
Nice.
is close.
I tried to feed
That's
my stuffed
fantastic.
animal one time, and
When was this? Yesterday?
probably this morning. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Looks like we got 30
Cool.
seconds. We'll do one more.
One more.
Tell me what you're seeing.
Oh, this one. Okay, so Crazy Aunt Lindsay, thank you. She's been hosting the Student Zone and having so much fun all night. We're going to be hearing from Sarah Gonzalez later today talking about how NASA uses images and colors to understand the universe. Don't miss out on that. Okay, so next up, key segment by Kevin Scott. Let's go.
Let's go. You guys ready?
Is
Strap in,
everyone
folks.
ready?
Let's do day 2. Let's
Okay,
do it.
good to go.
And here we go.
Felt pretty good about that.
Let's feel these.
Try it again.
Foster here.
So it's all about learning, connecting.
The motion should be more kinetic and fluid.
Yep, we got it.
All right.
Sounds like the THX.
Welcome, and thank you all for joining today. I'm so excited to be here with everyone virtually this year for Build. I'm a maker and an engineer at heart, so this event has always been one of my favorite opportunities to connect with the folks out there doing the real innovation on top of the platforms and tools that we provide.
Nice camera.
That innovation is something
Nice
developers
mic.
have been driving forward for decades, since the dawn of the computing
That's how
revolution.
you do it, folks.
And at Microsoft, our job has always been to empower you with the best possible tools for you to do your job, creating the world's digital future.
Got that bokeh
In a
in the
present
background.
defined by uncertainty, faced with daunting challenges and unprecedented need, what you all do is more important now than ever. And today, I'm here to talk to you about what's coming next, the technology trends that will shape how software and development look in the future. I'm lucky to have lived through several eras of the ongoing revolution in computing. I think you could argue that revolution is a bigger force shaping our world now than it ever has been. Each era of the computing revolution has been defined by boundaries and constraints. We overcome the constraints and push past the boundaries, and we then forget the boundaries existed as we accelerate breakthroughs on the path to ubiquity. The great author and futurist Arthur C. Clarke's Profiles of the Future contains a quote that I think embodies this spirit of exploration and discovery perfectly. The only way of finding the limits of the possible is by going beyond them into the impossible. There are a number of big picture developments that are going to change how we all approach technology in the future. The end of Moore's Law, the explosion of data, the evolution of the edge among them. We've been able to take for granted that there's a PC on every desk and in every home for so long that we forget how impossible a goal that must have seemed in the late 70s and early 80s. Bill Gates wrote his first commercial program on an Intel 8008 microprocessor. The most powerful GPU used for training AI models right now is billions of times more powerful than this device. If you combine every 8008 ever made, that would still be several orders of magnitude less computing power than you carry around in your pocket in 2020. And that wasn't all. The scarcity of compute at the beginning of the PC era was just one of many obstacles that had to be overcome before we could have personal computing so ubiquitous that we all have the luxury of taking it for granted. And here's the interesting thing. These impossible-sounding constraints that Bill Gates and a bunch of other personal computing pioneers confronted in the early days of that era seem more like challenges and opportunities to them than obstacles that should deter them. None of those pioneers could have accurately predicted what personal computing would become, but they had a pretty good idea of the trends that would enable what they were attempting, as well as the technical challenges that they had to overcome. They invested into those trends and focused their ingenuity and creativity on overcoming those challenges. So today, I want to focus specifically on the trends and constraints that are influencing one of the most significant developments in the history of computing, the explosion of large-scale machine learning models and rapid advancements in AI. Microsoft has been able to do some amazing things to drive this trend forward. But none of the major shifts in our computing revolution have happened just because of the efforts of one company. PCs became a phenomenon not because of the PC itself, but because of the breadth of things people did with them. PCs are a platform for others to build on top of. The internet changed the world not because of TCP/IP and HTTP, but because it was a platform for individuals and entrepreneurs and big businesses to create and innovate. Even what you do every day on your mobile device isn't about the technology in the device, but more about the breadth of applications on those devices and the people, content, and services those applications connect you to. At every one of these inflection points, the leaps forward we made were because of the contributions of developers. Any platform is only as good as the developers who use it.
This is
So for
giving
AI
me
to achieve
late
its full
90s dot
potential,
matrix
it
printer
must be a platform.
PTSD.
And this platform will need to be powered and delivered at truly unprecedented scale and democratized so everyone can innovate and build on top of it. That's where all of you come in. The future of AI will be in the hands of the developers who can harness its powers, and you won't need to be a data scientist or machine learning specialist to do so. For any developer, the wildest dreams of what you can achieve and create with technology will become accessible as we build AI at scale. The reason that I wake up every morning excited about my job is not because we get to work on these things, but because we get to work on them in service of others. That's why I feel so fortunate to be speaking today with all of you, the explorers who are going to help us expand the boundaries of what is possible.
You're going to see some pretty amazing things in the next 45 minutes. Giant supercomputers, new resources for training massive AI models, AI-assisted coding, and perhaps most importantly, a pizza-delivering robot dog. So make sure to stick around to catch it all. But first, we'll step back for just a moment and start today off with what I know has been top of mind for everybody, the global crisis of COVID-19. The last few months have shown us why we need the kind of boundaryless thinking that Clark spoke about to apply against a massive, intractable challenge that's impacted every single one of us. Developers all around the world have risen to the challenge presented by this pandemic to create and deploy new software and tools with unprecedented speed. First up today is Peter Lee, who's been leading some extraordinary efforts within Microsoft to channel the creativity and passion of our own employees to help.
Thanks, Kevin, and hi, everyone. As all of you know, this pandemic has had terrible consequences all around the world. From the loss of life to social isolation to an economic decline that rivals the Great Depression, we've all been confronted with profound challenges. But you know, this crisis has also brought out the best in humanity. People and organizations around the world have been working together, often virtually, to build the tools, the technologies, and the solutions that people need. People like healthcare workers on the front lines, or researchers and scientists racing to find the new drugs and vaccines that we all need. We here at Microsoft have been especially inspired when we've had a chance to work together and code together with these types of people and organizations. And as one example, I'd like to share a snippet of a Teams conversation I recently had with Rod Hochman, who is the CEO of the Providence Health System, on their deployment of the Microsoft Health Bot. And then, of course, after that first patient, you started to see a huge influx of inquiries from concerned citizens, people who were seeking advice and help if they were feeling symptoms. Can you say a little bit about how the COVID-19 self-assessment bot called Grace helped?
Sure. So immediately when you have a epidemic, the next thing is going to be is how do you triage people so that they don't go to the wrong place? And immediately what we worry about with someone with COVID-19 is that we're going to quickly overwhelm all of our emergency rooms. We'd infect everyone there, and we'd be out of business. So the name of the game is get people assessed way before they come to the emergency room. Well, how do you do that? And how do you make people, what kind of tools do they have so they can figure out, am I sick enough? Should I go? Or if I do, how do I get in touch with someone? So quickly, with Grace and creating a bot which could sort out for an individual, if I have X, Y, and Z, then what do I do? And then once they did that, where do you direct them? Well, do you go to the emergency room? Do you go to express care? Do you call your doctor up? Do you get a telehealth visit? So what quickly we were able to do with a bot was get people information, and then importantly, be able then subsequently to direct them to places other than the emergency room or an ambulance to go. And that probably was one of the things that saved our hospitals and were able to triage folks without getting overwhelmed.
It was just so great working with your tech teams collaboratively on that bot. And in fact, You then connected us to.
Have you guys
the
used that one?
CDC,
Have you filled out the?
to really help them establish the same kinds of capabilities?
I've seen several iterations of it. I think the World Health Organization has one too.
Over 150,000 people
wow.
that use the bot, 170,000 other time users. And the exchange of information was 3.2 million messages.
Wow.
And that was just in the space from about early March till up until a little bit before now.
Incredible.
And that led to about 13,000 televisits a day. 13,000 televisits a day. So we're completely bypassing having to bring people into primary care offices, but getting them the right care at the right place. And then you look at the ability for a tool like this to be spread to everywhere so that we could be triaging patients, whether you're in New York, whether you're somewhere else, and be able to do it consistently.
It's amazing what even a small application of AI can do to help a health system respond to a crisis. In fact, the COVID-19 health bot has now been deployed at over 1,500 healthcare sites in 23 countries around the world.
There we go.
And it's helped over 32 million people self-assess their own symptoms.
I've done it.
But it doesn't stop there. We're also donating massive amounts of GPU computing power to organizations like Immunity Bio, Folding at Home, and great research groups around the world. They all really amount to working together. No one organization, no one person is going to be able to beat this thing. It's working together, developing new technologies together that is going to be necessary to overcome this crisis. And so, for all of you, we look forward to serving you and to working together with you. Please stay safe and healthy, everyone. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Peter. As a company and as an industry, we're on a journey to solve the world's most intractable problems through the massive power and creative potential of AI. One of the biggest developments in the field over the past couple of years has been the training of very large deep neural networks to discover generalized language representations that can be reused in many different applications. These new models train on very large volumes of unlabeled data using new techniques known as self-supervised learning. Models trained using these new techniques have achieved levels of performance in natural language processing that have upended the field and are now being applied to other domains. Even though the models have already become very big, their performance continues to improve as they get bigger. Given that these models are very large and do most or all of their training on unlabeled data, one of the primary things limiting their performance is having an abundance of compute power to throw at the training task. The implications of this and what it means for AI are massive. To tell you more about this trend, let me introduce you to my technical advisor, Luis Vargas, who's been leading and aligning our cross-company initiative to bring together these large-scale models and new computing architectures that together can power AI at unprecedented scale.
Thanks, Kevin. My name is Luis Vargas, and I work in Kevin's team helping drive our AI strategy. In the next 8 minutes, we'll talk about AI at scale, what it is, and why it matters. I have 3 announcements for AI developers and a demo of AI settling a long-standing dispute from Star Wars. As you understand more than most, the explosion of internet data and large amounts of compute from the cloud have pushed the fast progress of AI. Microsoft has contributed to this progress by advancing the state-of-the-art in areas like speech recognition, computer vision, and natural language understanding. And we have made many of these capabilities available to everyone as Azure Cognitive Services. Much of this has built on supervised learning, where we train AI models from scratch to perform a task by using large amounts of labeled data. Because of this dependency, learning is constrained by human effort. Over the past year, we have seen the emergence of a new training approach called self-supervised learning, where AI models can learn from large amounts of unlabeled data. For example, models can learn about language by reading large volumes of text and predicting words and sentences as they do so. No labels are needed because the labels are in the data itself, the words and the sentences being predicted. As the model does this billions of times, it gets really, really good at understanding how words relate to each other on different contexts. This results in the model acquiring a very good understanding of the language. The more data that is used for learning, the richer the understanding. Thankfully, in today's world, there is an immense amount of web data that we can crawl and curate through Bing. The language understanding encoded in the model can then be fine-tuned to support a large number of language tasks, such as sentiment analysis, search, question answering, or summarization, all this through a process called transfer learning. This removes the need to train task-specific models from scratch and increases the accuracy of tasks while dramatically reducing the need for labeled data. Now, besides data, the size of a model determines its ability to learn and encode the complexity of language. The model size is described by its number of parameters, roughly the number of connections in this neural network. The more parameters that a model has, the better it can capture the difficult nuances of language. A year ago, the largest AI models in the world had around 1 billion parameters, or Turing NLG, a natural language generation model, the largest today, has 17 billion. A rough analogy is that we have gone from third grade reading and comprehension level to a high school level. Let's look at it in action. Let's start by asking the model a couple of random questions. The model has learned facts, concepts, and grammar from large amounts of data, including all of Wikipedia, tens of millions of web pages, and thousands of books. When did we first land on the moon? Notice that the model is not doing a query against a database or an index, but instead understanding the semantic meaning of the question, relating it to the world of information that it has learned, and synthesizing a grammatically correct sentence. What are the Enterprise's main weapons in Star Trek? And those are phasers and photon torpedoes. Nice. Let's now copy and paste a document that the model has never seen before, like this memo from Satya about the Microsoft response to COVID-19. And let's ask the model some questions about it. How many messages does the healthcare bot respond to? You can find the answer here, 1 million messages per day. Great. What was the first for the University of Bologna? With some semantic understanding of the content, you can find the answer here. They moved 90% of its courses for 80,000 students online to Teams in 3 days, which is awesome. How are Power Apps and Power BI being used? They're being used to manage bed count and inventory of critical supplies and sharing that information with others across the region. Amazing. How are
No, Gina, where things get dangerous is when DeepMind was teaching Google Brain to play StarCraft.
Researchers developing potential therapeutics using voluntary computers, which is fantastic. Before we move on, as I promised in the beginning, let's finally settle the long-standing Star Wars debate of who shot first in the Mos Eisley Cantina by copying the Wikipedia article about the relevant scene and asking the model who shot first. And there you go, Solo shot first. If you watch the video again, notice that the response is not found explicitly in the article. Once again, the model has understood the content and synthesized the appropriate answer. Now, let's ask the model to do something different, to summarize content. Let's start with something that most are familiar with, the story of Romeo and Juliet, by copying it from Wikipedia and asking the model to generate a summary. As the model reads the text, it abstracts the most important ideas from it and stitches them together into a cohesive summary, tweaking it as it makes progress. See how the completed summary contains the main points. Romeo and Juliet fall in love, Juliet's parents force her to marry Paris, Romeo poisons himself, and Juliet stabs herself, and it discards other points less relevant, like Tybalt calling Mercutio. Let's now summarize a complete long article about Microsoft's commitment to be carbon negative by 2030. Once again, as the model makes progress on the article, it abstracts the most important ideas into the summary, reassessing the relevant priority and tweaking the summary accordingly while maintaining cohesiveness. Given the length of the article and the
This is called
importance of
automated
multiple aspects,
blogging in 2025.
this is going to be a much richer summary.
We'll be there soon.
We refer to the current trend of increasingly larger AI models.
I can't
and
wait
their
to build
ability
my
power a
auto
large
blog
number of
bot.
tasks as AI at scale. We believe that this trend will continue into the hundreds of billions and eventually
That's pretty
trillions
impressive.
of parameters. Training models with tens to hundreds of billions of parameters requires big clusters of hundreds of machines with specialized AI accelerators interconnected by high bandwidth networks inside and across the machines. Azure provided with such clusters, for example, with the latest NVD2VM series with HB100 GPUs connected by NVLink and InfiniBand. Training models at this scale requires the ability to distribute and optimize the training of the model with large amounts of data across all of the AI accelerators in the cluster. Our models are so large that our training requires, on one hand, splitting the neural network layers across multiple machines, and on the other, partitioning the huge training data set into batches to simultaneously train multiple instances of the model across the cluster while combining the learning. Over the past year, we have developed state-of-the-art optimization techniques to make these processes significantly more efficient by reducing redundancy in the state stored and replicated across the GPUs. We recently open sourced these techniques into a PyTorch library called DeepSpeed to enable everyone to train AI models 10 times bigger and 5 times faster on the same infrastructure. We have continued innovating at a fast rate, and I'm happy to announce that today we're open sourcing the second version of DeepSpeed, which now enables you to train models up to 20 times bigger and 10 times faster.
Cool.
Besides DeepSpeed, Microsoft Research has created various other complementary state-of-the-art training optimizations, targeting different levels of the software stack between a framework like PyTorch or TensorFlow and the hardware. We wanted to make it easy for you to use all these training optimizations together with the framework and the hardware of your choice. So I'm happy to announce that today we're bringing together the optimizations from DeepSpeed as well as other libraries from Microsoft to the popular Onyx runtime. This adds support for highly efficient training besides of inferencing to this framework agnostic and hardware agnostic AI runtime. AI at scale and the reuse of large AI models is transforming the way that we operate at Microsoft. And you can see this already showing up in our products. For example, Bing fine-tunes our Turing language model to support search and question answering over the web, and then Word does this over documents. Outlook uses it to suggest replies to emails and the most relevant documents for a meeting. And Dynamics uses it to suggest actions to a seller based on its interactions with a customer. However, language learned from web data is sometimes not enough to support the specific domain needs of our products. For example, the productivity domain in Office, the business domain in Dynamics, or the professional domain in LinkedIn. Every organization uses its own distinct vocabulary that a language model must learn. To achieve this, we're training one personalized language model per organization by augmenting our base Turing model with the data generated within the organization itself. As with the base model, we use self-supervised learning to do this without the need for labeled data. This allows to automate the learning process within each organization while ensuring privacy. AI at scale is improving not only our models' understanding of language, but also their understanding of relationships between language and other types of data. We're training large self-supervised models jointly across text and images to support tasks combining these, like searching visually for images with a text description in Bing, or automating the captioning of images for accessibility in Office. Similarly, we're training models across text and video, for example, to automate the creation of outlines with the sections identified in a video. Finally, we're experimenting with adding further data dimensions into our training, like the layout in Word documents and in PowerPoint slides to automatically generate one from the other, or customer activity sequences in Dynamics to identify potential issues and opportunities. We think of our large-scale AI models and the systems that enable their use as a new software platform, one that enables faster innovation and better collaboration. We believe that this platform needs to benefit everyone, and so I'm happy to announce that in the coming weeks, we'll open source our Turing language models together with recipes to use them in Azure Machine Learning. We're very excited to see what developers build with this. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Luis. The growth and development of these massive ML models is going to represent such a huge step forward in how we approach and use technology. As we just discussed, our primary constraint to growing these models further is the availability of affordable compute.
Wow.
With Moore's Law slowing, we have to find other mechanisms to efficiently scale compute to meet the needs of modern AI. We're looking at the complete system for machine learning and AI, from data center power and cooling, to networks, to computing architectures, all the way up to operating systems, programming languages, and frameworks. As a computer scientist and a systems researcher, this is honestly the most exciting period that I've experienced in the evolution of computing infrastructure. And all of this unprecedented innovation is converging in the service of building amazing new AI supercomputing technology. We've been building increasingly powerful systems for AI for a while. Late last year, we completed work on our first AI supercomputer and handed it over to scientists and engineers to start using in their work. The site top500.org keeps a list of the world's most powerful supercomputers,
And I'm excited to announce today that our cloud-hosted supercomputer would make that list. By our measures, it's one of the top 5 largest supercomputers in the world. It uses 285,000 CPU cores and 10,000 GPUs connected with an extremely fast network. This machine is purpose-built for the kinds of massive distributed models that Lewis talked about earlier. That gives this supercomputer all the benefits of a dedicated appliance paired with the benefits of a robust modern cloud infrastructure. One of the most exciting things about this machine is that it's cloud hosted. It's Azure. So because of the power of the cloud, we were able to develop and deploy this in just 6 months. And because it's Azure, it benefits from our carbon neutral commitments as a company. Let me step back for a second because I'm sure there's at least a few of you out there right now who are saying, well, it's pretty cool, but I'm not exactly in the market for one of the world's largest supercomputers just this minute. The work that we've done to get here has a clear benefit to any Azure customer. Our advances in large-scale clusters, industry-leading network design, and a software stack to control it all are applicable to the Azure product roadmap. A good analogy here might be the way automotive technology is pioneered in high-end racing before making its way into the cars that you and I drive every day. Hybrid powertrains, all-wheel drive, ABS, and more. Except in this situation, developers get the benefit of the output as well, through the large ML models hosted on this supercomputing infrastructure. This new kind of computing power is going to drive amazing benefits for the developer community, empowering a previously unbelievable AI software platform that will accelerate your projects large and small. Just like the ubiquity of sensors in smartphones, multi-touch, location, high-quality cameras, accelerometers enabled an entirely new set of experiences, the output of this work is going to give developers a platform to build new products and services. Having access to ubiquitous, high-quality language translation, understanding, summarization, and reasoning is going to help supercharge developers. It will increase not only your own productivity, but also the capabilities of the products and services you develop.
The machine we're talking about today was built for our friends and partners at OpenAI who are going to use it to power their industry-leading AI research. A few days ago, I had the pleasure of talking about how these amazing advances in AI supercomputing will translate to real-world impact for developers and organizations with a very special guest.
So my guest today is Sam Altman. Sam's one of the most successful entrepreneurs and investors in the industry, and we've had the good fortune of working with Sam through OpenAI, where he's CEO. So I'm super happy to have you with us here today, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
So we're talking today about AI supercomputers and these gigantic models that we've been working on. And in a very real sense, like you all are at the very, very frontier. Like you are doing the most ambitious work in AI today. And so I just wanted to get your perspective about what it is that you think we're going to be able to do with these really large models, and in particular, how they're going to affect developers and like how they do their work and what they're able to build.
It's a great question, and it's exciting for us because we view ourselves as a AI development and deployment company. We actually want to build these large-scale systems and see how far we can push it. And as we do more and more advanced research and scale it up into bigger and bigger systems, we begin to make this whole new wave of tools and systems that can do things that were in the realm of science fiction only a few years ago. People have been thinking for a long time about computers that can understand the world and sort of do something like thinking. But now that we have those systems beginning to come to fruition, I think what we're going to see from developers, the new products and services that can be imagined and created, are going to be incredible. I think it's like a fundamental new piece of computing infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you and I have chatted about a lot. So like we have finally gotten to the point with these very big models where transfer learning, the ability to train a model for once and then use it in a bunch of different applications or scenarios, like that's finally working with these big models. And so like it's really exciting. You can start thinking about the models themselves as a platform. And so like I'd love for you to chat a little bit about like the incredible breadth of things that you all have been doing. It's not just natural language, right?
No, we're interested in trying to understand all of the data in the world. So language, images, audio, and more. But really, it's all data, right? It's all just, you get input about the world, and you try to understand the fundamental patterns and concepts of what's going on there, and then use that to build systems that can do useful things for people. And the fact that this same technology and these same systems, as you mentioned, can solve this very broad array of problems and understand different things in different ways, that's really exciting to us. That's been the promise of these more generalized systems that can do a broad variety of tasks for a long time. And as we work with the supercomputer to scale up these models, we keep finding new tasks that the models are capable of.
Yeah, and so I know you've got a demo to show us today, so I'm going to be tremendously exciting. I think this might be the first time that I'm seeing this. So this is an application of what these really, really big models can do that might be super interesting for developers.
Yeah, so we've talked about how these massive language models trained on supercomputers can do all these different kinds of natural language tasks, but the models actually go much further. When we fine-tune them on specific data, we find that they can do things that we didn't expect. And one thing we were curious about was what we could do with code generation. Could we help developers write code? And so we used the Microsoft supercomputer, our generative text models, and we fine-tuned it on thousands of open source GitHub repositories. And we'll roll the video and show you what happened.
I'm going to show what an
Gina,
OpenAI language
this
model
is
can do
what you
when
need to be
applied to
worried
code
about.
generation. The model I'm using today was trained on code from thousands of open source GitHub repositories using the same unsupervised techniques as our GPT models. Let's try it out. I'll start with a pretty basic Python task. I want to write a function to check whether or not a string is a palindrome. I'll start by writing the function signature and a quick comment string. And now I'll ask the model to generate the code that it thinks should come next. Great, the model got it right. But that was a pretty simple example. If I searched for is palindrome on Stack Overflow, I'm sure I'd find something similar. So let's step it up a bit. This time, I'll write a function that definitely wasn't in the training set. Let's return list indices for elements that are palindromes. And at least 7 characters. And let's see what code the model generates. Great,
Holy
that looks
shit,
right.
Dude.
And it even used the isPalindrome function from above. This time we can also rest assured that it didn't just copy some snippet from the training set. The model came up with a unique solution to a unique requirement. Let's step it up again. This time I'll write an order class composed of items. I pasted in some code defining the item class and the properties of my order class. Now let's write some methods for the order class. Let's start by writing a method to compute the total price. But let's add a twist. Let's apply a discount to items that are palindromes.
Oh.
Let's see what the model suggests. It helpfully writes a comment string for us. But that's not quite right. I only wanted the discount applied to palindromes, not to the whole order. Let's edit the comment to clarify what I wanted. Compute the total price and return it. Apply a discount to items whose names are palindromes.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's try again. So far, so good. Great, that's much better. Actually, I wanted the default discount to be 20% off, not 80% off, but that's an easy enough fix. There we go. Let's round it out by printing a receipt for the order. Print the total price and the price of each item. Here we go. Perfect. That's just what we wanted. And it even used the compute total price method that the model and I wrote together. Beyond helping implement functions, we've also seen the model excel at other development tasks, like writing unit tests. All in all, this model can generate useful and context-aware code suggestions that would make any developer more productive.
Where's
Tooling
my
built on these
tinfoil
kinds of
hat,
models
guys?
will allow you to
I'll be
spend
right
less
back.
time on repetitive, time-consuming coding tasks and focus more on the creative aspects of writing software.
Let's write code to teach supercomputers
It's truly
to write
incredible
code.
what these models are capable of doing, and it's clear that they're going to assist us in being more productive across all of our work, from reasoning over documents to writing emails to building software. Thanks so much for your time, Sam. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Kevin.
We're actually already using AI-powered tooling at Microsoft today. Visual Studio IntelliCode's AI assistant saves developers time by learning from the input of the broader coding community. Our research teams are working to take these huge models and distill them down to a size where they're practically usable in Visual Studio. You can check out the IntelliCode talk later this afternoon to learn more. So hopefully you can imagine the possibilities once we have this kind of massive power supporting AI platforms for you to build and innovate on. Another super important place where AI will be used as a platform in the future will be at the intelligent edge, building a bridge between the physical and digital worlds. Let's join Lila Tretikov to share some of the ways this has been developing in the recent past and what it will look like in the future.
Thanks, Kevin. It is impressive to see our extra large AI supercomputers and what they enable our developers to do. But we have something equally cool to show you in the next 9 minutes. This time, our AI will be extra small and extra distributed. It will run across numerous smart interconnected devices, enabling you to program them as one intelligent system. To enable this, you will see our upcoming programming and deployment models, Dapper and OM, networked by 5G APIs from AT&T, supported by Onyx-based AI models that can seamlessly operate between the edge and the cloud. And finally, say hello to my friend Spot here, a Boston Dynamics robot. Spot will literally run AI on the edge. Thank you, Spot. Good boy. These past few months have rapidly accelerated how important using AI on the intelligent edge is across a host of scenarios. Frictionless access, hands-free computing, and personal protective equipment became required nearly overnight. At Cardinal Teen Hospital in Taiwan, workers help protect patients and staff from the spread of COVID-19 by deploying computer vision at hospital access points. In France, doctors are using HoloLens to collaborate and share information with their patients. In education, for the first time ever, instead of working together on campus, all first-year medical students from Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine practiced anatomy at home. These examples build on the intelligent systems work we have previously done with Unilever, Shell, Merck, and many others. We are eyewitnessing another revolution. All things around us are becoming smart things. You will program and manage them as one AI-powered cloud-to-edge intelligent system. With such a system, we can reimagine and reprogram our physical world to help manage our work, automate redundant tasks, see, hear, and collaborate across thousands of miles, as well as keep us safer when we can't be there in person.
So we're going to go from teaching supercomputers to write their own code to a dog robot
yourselves
immediately afterwards.
Let's take a look at a prototype application showing some of our forward-looking AI on the edge features. This app uses an infrared camera and an AI model trained to detect license plates to help with curbside food pickup for my favorite hypothetical takeout pizza restaurant. You see the application detecting the license plate of a person picking up their to-go order. Note that if we lose network connectivity, the license plate detection fails. We can't have that. We need zero business downtime. So we're going to fix this by allowing the application to run on the edge when disconnected and on the cloud when the network becomes available. This is our architecture. Our camera is already connecting to an edge device, which right now uses an Onyx model in the cloud. We're going to change this edge microservice to also leverage a local Onyx model when disconnected. We could also configure this system to run exclusively on the edge, never sending anything to the cloud at all, for privacy or cost reasons. We're using the Dapper distributed application runtime, which offers a simple microservices-based programming model. This is our solution in Visual Studio Code. This wrapper of a 5G network API from AT&T allows us to query 5G network conditions. And our code will leverage the 5G API to allow us to switch between calling cloud and edge based on connectivity. We'll create a route to handle the network disconnecting. And we write the logic to use the local API model. For deployment, our Dapper microservice is already configured with Azure Arc to run local and in the cloud. Azure Arc uses these deployment specs to automatically deploy to our Edge Kubernetes cluster when we check in our changes. Now that we've made our changes and Azure Arc has deployed them, let's retest. As you can see, the application works with zero downtime, with only slight decrease in confidence levels when running just on the edge. And as the network is restored, the AI adjusts back to cloud-based mode. This isn't all though. We've detected our customer coming to the restaurant. Now we need to deliver their food. To deliver the takeout, we'd like to show how we're integrating our work with autonomous robotics, in this case with the Boston Dynamics team and Spot, who you've met earlier. Gina is going to help us show this work.
Thanks, Lila. I'm going to show how our intelligent edge
Here's
solution
the future, gang.
can leverage AI to have a Boston Dynamics Spot robot look around, use our edge AI to find the customer's car, and carry their takeout to them. We've mounted an edge device on this Spot robot to allow us to control the robot autonomously and deploy our AI model using Onyx runtime.
This is
Here I'm showing the code where we
ridiculous,
use the
amazing,
Onyx
and
AI
terrifying
model
all
on the
at
edge
the same
device
time.
that will help us recognize the license plate using images captured from the robot's cameras. We will use this code to leverage the robot's camera perspective and control the robot's position to navigate to the car with our license plate. Lastly, we've built this using custom commands, leveraging speech and language understanding in Azure Cognitive Services to activate Spot to deliver the food. Putting everything together, we'll ask Spot to deliver the order.
Hey, Spot.
Deliver order to Lila. Note that in the future, Spot could potentially pick up and load the order into the car. Lila will tell us more about the complexity in training this kind of AI. Good job, Spot. Over to you, Lila.
Yum, pizza. Thank you, Gina. We just used Visual Studio Code,
Carlos, do
the
you think it's going to be
5G
possible in the
network
future to
APIs,
replace junior
Onyx for AI on
coders
Edge and Cloud, Azure Arc,
with an as a
Dapper
service
and
product?
and the Boston Dynamics robot to build an app that intelligently
know.
crosses the cloud and edge. As Gina
good question.
mentioned, to deliver the groceries,
Will
we
there
require
even be a
precise
need
control.
for that
We
if
need a
there's
high
an as
degree
a
of
service? So I think
confidence
the
for
answer to your
navigation
question
path,
ultimately is
traversing
yes,
stairs, and controlling speed on approach.
but you got to start
To
somewhere.
build such a system, you need reinforcement learning paired with expert-guided teaching. In the same way you would learn how to master a sport. This training requires
you give the
hundreds
dog
of
treats?
thousands, if not millions, of repeated attempts to balance controls and forces that act
Does it have
upon
puppy
our
breath?
system. I would like to announce public preview of Project Bonsai, the machine teaching component of our autonomous systems platform, which enables training such models. Bonsai is not for robotics only, though. Our customers have used it to optimize and bring autonomy to a wide range of scenarios, from complex process controls in the chemical industry to machine tuning, calibration, and motion control in manufacturing, and to even making apparel goods and food processing. The next wave of computing will enable us to manage the world hands-free, remote, even in the most dangerous and difficult conditions. Smart things will be our remote hands and eyes, and we are building intelligent systems to empower you to program them to solve your most critical needs. These critical systems must protect our security and privacy. At Microsoft, we believe it is our responsibility, in partnership with developers like yourselves, to innovate transparently, respectfully, and responsibly. We are committed to enabling developers around the globe to have a lasting impact on society through our ethical AI principles and the AI for Good initiatives. With Microsoft providing AI platforms, safeguards, and guidelines, we really look forward to seeing the intelligent systems you build for your customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. I really hope that what
cool.
you've seen today excites and inspires you. As I've said before, that's really why we're here, to provide great tools and platforms for the people who are tirelessly contributing so much passion, imagination, and ingenuity at the front lines of the technology revolution every day. We saw such amazing examples of how that's taken place across so many different facets of the digital world and the physical world, and how the two can be connected to help us tackle some of our most daunting global challenges. And with the explosion of machine learning models and AI platforms driven by superpowered infrastructure, how anybody will soon be able to harness computing power that was unthinkable even a few years ago to create and innovate at a scale that we've never seen. I really encourage all of you to put your acute thought and attention towards the trends in computing that we discussed today. I truly believe that what happens in the coming years, when we see the maturity of things like AI at scale, unsupervised machine learning, and reinforcement learning, will be a fundamental alteration to the fabric of what technology means to us and what it can achieve. And it's going to impact every aspect of your work as developers, sooner rather than later. Everything that we talked about here is real technology that we have today. This is stuff that we've been thinking deeply about for a long time. We have the resources and the charter to do so, but in just a few years, every developer at every level will have to think the same way about AI, about the edge, about how to apply machine learning. In some ways, you could even think about the intersection we're seeing of these developments between AI and the sciences as the new calculus. In the 18th century, the introduction of calculus gave us the field of physics and helped us to better model and understand the world around us. Increasingly, neural networks are playing that role today in the sciences. This is particularly taking place in biology. Think of some of the efforts we saw earlier to use ML to rapidly understand and cope with COVID-19. That won't be the last existential crisis we face as a species, and these new tools are going to help us bear the weight of many elements of an uncertain future with more solid footing. There are a couple of things that need to happen for any of this to have a net positive impact on our society. First, all of it will have to be available to everyone. We must democratize the access to these tools so anyone can use them. Much of the onus to do that is on us, the platform builders, but all of you share in this responsibility as well. Whether you're building a mobile app, creating new tools for precision agriculture, personalized medicine, or commerce, the benefits that flow from the power of scaled AI will need to reach as many people as possible. The barriers to entry must be lowered. Second, we must take care to develop this new platform thoughtfully, accountably, and ethically. Microsoft is already committed to a set of responsible AI principles that are core to all of our AI development efforts. But all of us in the technology ecosystem need to be vigilant that the AI products and applications we create are inclusive, equitable, and human-centered. My ask of you today is not just to help us build the future on top of these new AI platforms. It's to do your part to help everybody on the planet share in the empowerment that can come from reaching a new frontier in our shared technology journey. That endpoint is our mission at Microsoft, but we can't achieve it without all of you. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Be safe, be well, and please never stop building and dreaming beyond the boundaries of what's possible.
So, Carlos, you bring up some good points there. Oh, we're going to go straight to Scott. Wow, okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live Q&A session.
I've got some notes
Scott
I definitely want
Guthrie.
to go over when we get to the
My
end
name is
here.
Labrina Loving.
Some of the points you were bringing
I'm a
up.
senior software engineer here at Microsoft, and I'm super excited to be here because I get to ask Scott all the amazing questions that you guys sent in over the last week. Hey, Scott, good morning.
Morning. Thanks, everyone, for watching.
Great, great. So we've got a really jam-packed session today, but before we get started, I want to kind of share how this is going to work. So over the past week, we received over 200 questions that spanned across products and roadmap to even trying to get a couple of tidbits of advice from you. So we wanted to make sure that we asked questions that really represented our developer community. We went through every single question, we categorized them, and we are going to break up the session into 2 core segments. So first, we're going to start with more product-focused questions. We're going to talk about Azure, data and AI, and .NET. Then in the second segment, we're going to start talking a little bit more about the future of Microsoft. And actually, we've got some really good suggestions from our developer community that I'd love to share with you. In between the segments, we're actually going to have a little bit of fun with you. So we're going to actually do a rapid fire set of questions where we'll ask you some really deep, dark, personal questions about you. How does that sound, Scott?
Sounds good.
All right, there's no turning back now. So let's get started. So the first couple questions we're going to talk about are Azure. So first question is from Randy Walker, and he wants to know, where do you think the growth is headed for the next few years in Azure?
Well, I think it's going to be an exciting next few years for Azure. I mean, I think, as we talked about at the event, everything in the world is going digital. And so, everything's going to have an IP address, everything's going to be connected. And there's, a huge need for, how do you, build applications that take advantage of that fact. And a cloud infrastructure is really the best way to do it. And so, I think you're going to see with Azure a tremendous amount of growth, both in terms of new apps, new ways to use data and AI, new ways to run code, not just in Azure, but also connected to edge-based IoT systems and other systems that run at what we call the edge. I think there's also going to be a lot of growth in terms of a need for how do we as developers architect those systems, and how do we work in teams to actually rapidly deploy them and do it in a reliable, continuous way. And hopefully if you saw my keynote, I try to hit on a lot of those different
See how he
aspects.
doubled that there,
and
work in
throughout this
teams?
conference, we're covering each of them. But I think it's going to be an exciting next couple of years. And I think the cloud is really going to be the next big enabler for the world, both in these sort of unusual times with COVID that we're living in, but beyond. I think it's just going to accelerate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to see where we're going to go and all the amazing work that I get to do over the next couple of years in Azure. So great. Thanks for that. So our next question comes from Michael O'Flaherty. What does the quantum computing roadmap on Azure look like over the next 10 years?
Well, I think in terms of things that are coming that are potentially game-changing, I think quantum is in that category. The challenge with quantum is it's still an emerging technology. And I think we're all trying to chase qubits and also figure out how do we build applications that can take advantage of some of the properties of quantum and some of the unique problems that quantum can solve. At Microsoft, we have a quantum team that's part of my organization that's hard at work at that. And as part of that, we're looking hard at both how do we provide quantum services through Azure, and we even announced some previews of some capabilities, I believe, this week along those lines. But we're also looking at, similar to how we've done it with other parts of Azure, looking at our development tools and our development languages so that we can enable quantum-based algorithms to be more rapidly developed. It's not just enough to have infrastructure. You really want to make it easy to write apps for that infrastructure.
Right.
And there's some great work that you can check out now that's available in preview form, and you'll see us provide all of this as a service going forward all through Azure.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited about getting to work on the quantum developer kit that's coming out, or that's available now, that our developer community can take advantage of. Great. So next question. With the spike in demand for Azure products and services, what is Microsoft doing to ensure that energy consumption is more efficient? This comes from Shahed.
Great question, Shahed. I think one of the things that you may hopefully saw, and I talked about briefly at the start of my keynote, is a set of promises and commitments that Microsoft made back in January around climate change. And specifically, there's a couple of things that we talked about, and a commitment in particular to be 100% renewable energy and be carbon negative by 2030. And we're actually quite a bit away, or quite a bit along that journey already. But we're basically saying by 2030, we will be carbon negative, meaning we're actually removing more carbon from the atmosphere than we're actually emitting into it. And then we also made a promise, which is by 2050, we will have removed all of the emissions that Microsoft has done since the founding of the company in 1975. And that includes, travel, that includes our offices, but, the big part of our energy consumption as a company is obviously our cloud. And so, that involves a ton of work around our cloud. And, as part of that, we are going to 100% renewable energy across all of our cloud operations. And we're now providing dashboards that you can look at, which actually even allows you to track your carbon usage inside Azure. And be able to understand even how does it compare versus, say, an on-premises data center. And you can understand how by moving to the cloud, it actually lowers both the carbon footprint as well as the overall energy costs for the planet. So that's definitely something that we're very committed to. I think of all the cloud providers, we have the most comprehensive program there and the most bold ambitions and commitments that we've made publicly in terms of getting to not just lower energy usage, but also really getting to net negative carbon emissions, which is what we need to do as a society in order to prevent global warming.
Okay, that's amazing. I'm really looking forward to checking out the dashboards and helping my customers understand kind of how they're impacting versus on-prem versus on Azure. So that's really exciting. So our next question comes from Lee. And the question is, what is the easiest way to move from Visual Studio Team Services on-prem to Azure DevOps?
Good question. The easiest way, so it's a good question. If you go to our Visual Studio Teams, or if you go to our Azure DevOps documentation, I believe we actually have some good guides in terms of how to move that you should check out first if you haven't looked already. And as part of that, we do have some migration tools specifically that enable some automatic migration of your services and things like your, obviously your source control, but also things like your issues and, how do you not lose your issue tracking numbers and IDs as you kind of migrate to the cloud. So definitely recommend checking out there. And if you still have problems, shoot us mail, and happy to help get the team involved to help. But in general, we're trying to make that as smooth a migration as possible. And I think we have some good tools to help, but let us know if you still have questions and we can follow up afterwards.
Yeah, no, we definitely have some amazing tools out on our website that help you walk through kind of a checklist of how do you migrate to Azure DevOps, if you have customizations, what things you should think about. So yeah, Scott, great answer. So our next piece, and this comes from Eric. So around .NET, why Microsoft .NET over XYZ language or framework? So my answers are usually half-baked, biased, and uninformed. So Scott, if someone were to ask you why they should consider .NET or some other language in the Microsoft stack, how would you respond?
Yeah, well, obviously I love .NET, so I wouldn't necessarily claim I'm not biased. I think, the things that, it's amazing when you think about .NET, we first introduced .NET to the world in July of 2000. So, we're about to come up to the 20th anniversary of having .NET out there at a Microsoft developer event, which is kind of an amazing milestone. There's not many technologies
that just made
and developer frameworks and languages in the world that have lasted that long. And, I think part of the reason why .NET has not only lasted, but is in some ways even stronger, I think, today than it's been in the past, has been a couple of things that I think are fairly enduring. One has been around C# and just the fact that C# is a great language to program in. I think it provides a nice balance of lots of great high-level productivity capabilities. And so it's a very elegant language from a terseness and productivity perspective, but at the same time is also type safe and generates very efficient code and allows you to kind of drop down if you want to and write very efficient algorithms as well. And I think that's true both from a language perspective, but then also when you look at the .NET libraries and then even the way our garbage collector and our code generator works. I think we've done a nice balance of productivity, library reuse, and then also the ability to get good performance. And I think if you look at .NET Core, which is obviously the last couple of years we've been talking about, that takes it to the next level. And we've had a lot of internal systems at Microsoft that are written in C# that as they have migrated to .NET Core, in some cases have gotten, a 2x performance improvement and are seeing, significant reductions in working set and memory usage and just better performance and latency all up. And, I love that after 20 years, we're still making improvements on performance, while at the same time still shipping new capabilities and productivity. And I think then that as a platform is super powerful, but then the ability to use Visual Studio, which with IntelliSense and with debugging and gives you, I think, the most productive development experience out there, bar none. I think that combination of all that is what makes, I think, .NET pretty special. And I think it's got a great future ahead of it. And I love that we have more people graduating from college starting with .NET today than we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so I think also there's a new generation of developers that are coming to .NET. And now that .NET is open source and now that .NET is cross-platform, it's great to see the energy and the community.
Make no mistake.
Really embracing it at an even greater level than it has been an awfully long time.
Yeah, that's amazing, Scott. So actually, we've got sort of a really good follow-up question to that. What is the future like for .NET? I kind of, and this is from Leslie, I'm kind of new to ASP.NET especially, and want to know what are the growth opportunities with this tech?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things that there's opportunities. I think one of the things that we've tried to do, Leslie, over the last couple of years that I feel good about is really make sure .NET works everywhere. And so the fact that you can use .NET on Windows and Mac and Linux, I think is key. The ability to use .NET not just in the cloud, but also for client applications as well as in IoT devices is key. And then, at the Build conference this week, we also released Blazor, which even allows you to take .NET and compile it down into JavaScript and run it inside a browser and use it with other JavaScript libraries. And so that combination of being able to use it everywhere, I think, gives maximum flexibility. And the fact that it's open source and we have, literally hundreds of thousands of contributions coming from the community, in addition to hundreds of Microsoft engineers working on it, I think is going to just keep driving the energy and the application of it for lots of things. I think one thing that we will see a lot more of with .NET over the next year that I'm very excited about is also it being used as an API layer and being able to publish APIs in a very easy way and consume APIs in an easy way. And we showed this a little bit in the second demo in my talk yesterday, where Jeff Holland did a great demo where he used ASP.NET Web API project to expose the REST API on top of a Cosmos DB database. And then he published it in a Kubernetes cluster. And then he called it from a Power App and then embedded it inside of Teams. And I think that pattern is also going to be something where there's a whole bunch of great .NET apps that'll be built that way. where it might be a different front end. It might be with Power Apps, which is more of a metadata-driven tool, or it might be a website built with ASP.NET, or it might be a rich client app or an IoT device. But then using ASP.NET and our web API support on the back end to publish that API and integrate it, I think that's something we started showing at Build even more in my keynote, as I mentioned, but you'll see even better tooling and better end-to-end support across our products in the months ahead. In particular, I think for internal employee-facing apps, being able to publish those applications as part of Teams, given that Teams is now used so heavily inside organizations, I think will also be another unique form factor that'll become more and more popular for .NET and ASP.NET apps in the coming year.
Okay, great. That's awesome. I'm so excited about the growth and expansion of .NET and being able to use it on Linux. Like, I can't imagine, like, every single day when I tell
Are
people
Azure
.NET
DevOps
runs
and
on
GitHub
Linux,
interchangeable?
Like,
Is there any dependency there?
So
Do you
super excited to
sacrifice
hear
one
all of
for
that.
the other, or go back and forth?
So lastly, we're going to talk a
Talk
little
to me,
bit
Devs.
about
How
some
does
AI
what's the interop look like between GitHub
Could you
and Azure
elaborate a
DevOps?
little bit about how the increased services provided by Microsoft, things like cognitive services, Azure Search, Synapse, provide a case for build and the build versus buy decisions? And this question comes from Mangus.
Yeah, in terms of Synapse and AI, and you're saying build versus buy. Can you repeat that last part again? Sorry, just want to make sure I get the question right.
Yeah, so could you elaborate a bit on how these increased services provide a stronger case for build and build versus buy decisions? So a lot
I just see a conflict of interest there.
Obviously in being challenged around build versus buy. So it seems like we definitely, with all of our tools, we're looking at more build. So how does that help that decision?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way I think about it is, and the approach we've tried to take is not have it be build or buy, but, or, not have it be like pre-built app or you build it from scratch, but really kind of how do we have this continuum? And I do think part of the power that we have with the Microsoft Cloud is the fact that we do have pre-built apps, things like Teams or things like Office 365 more broadly, but also things like Power BI and Power Apps and Power Automate and Dynamics 365 in particular with sales and customer support and field service. We have a bunch of these apps that do give you out-of-the-box functionality that you can use to stand up very quickly and that have AI algorithms and data models already pre-built that you can leverage. But then what is great is the fact that you can take those applications and extend them with Azure and use Synapse and use our custom AI platform to build your own models or extend our data models with your own entities or your own columns and plug in your own custom AI algorithms into that mix, and then basically publish them into the apps and have the apps light up and get smarter. And there's not really many platforms. There's no other vendor out there that does that to the degree that we do. And I think that's a key differentiator. And that's partly why even in my keynote I showed Power Apps and I showed Power BI in a bunch of the scenarios. Is not because I think that replaces custom dev, but I think it means for everyone that is doing custom dev, if you can actually do custom dev together with that, you actually deliver far more than what just a pure buy solution would look like. But you also deliver it in a way that custom dev is as productive or even more productive than just buying something off the shelf as well. And so I think it's really an and we're trying to design our products specifically so that you can leverage custom dev, leverage pre-built apps, and do it in a no-cliffs kind of way.
I feel like I'm in trouble here. Like I got a speeding ticket and I'm seeing my attorney.
Will help you drive a whole bunch of projects going forward and really deliver fantastic
Whenever Scott
value
goes full screen, I feel like I'm in a law office. Or
yeah, I love it. I love the best
school.
part of my job is when I'm able to bring kind of business analysts from an organization and their developers together in a room, and we actually get to build something cool. So love it. So last question in this section.
Jason, I think a series on Azure DevOps would be brilliant, man.
Back in terms of developing the next level of intelligence? Is it the limitations of deep learning algorithms and software, or is it the physical limitations of hardware computers? And that comes from Sened. And also there's kind of a follow-up of where do you see AI by the end of this decade?
Good question. I think in terms of what's holding back AI, I mean, I think there's different ways to answer that. I think, and I think Kevin Scott in his talk here at Build will go into more detail. But if you look at, the more compute you throw at AI, and part of the reason why, for example, we're building our AI supercomputer as part of Azure, is we definitely see there's a set of algorithms that as you throw more compute at it, and you do that compute not just in terms of CPU, but also in particular the network interchange and the bandwidth between those CPUs is just as critical, because otherwise then the network becomes the bandwidth, the limiter. But you see smarter algorithms getting built, and I think Kevin Scott will cover it very well in his talk here at Build about some of the amazing types of problems that we're able to solve now that even 2 or 3 years ago looked like science fiction, but they're now here in terms of text understanding, machine understanding, and I think his talk is happening this morning, or maybe it just happened, but so I don't want to steal all his thunder, but there's some really cool demos and some that we'll talk to. So I do think there is something there in terms of more compute, and in particular more network and faster network being a limiter of just the algorithms. But we're solving that, and over the next couple of years, as we continue to kind of improve the computational and the network speeds, the algorithms get smarter. I think though there's also a problem though, which is that we're trying to solve, which is really around data models. AI algorithms, smart AI or AI algorithms can only be really built when you have good data. And if you have bad data, then you can build really bad AI algorithms. And so that's a really important thing for people to understand as you're building your own AI algorithms is if you put garbage in, you will get garbage out from your AI.
Absolutely.
And, there's a whole bunch of problems around bias, around unintended consequences around AI, and around just incorrect answers that you can do if you don't look at your data inputs well and make sure that you have the right data. And part of the responsible AI work that we announced in my keynote yesterday, and we're talking a lot more about at Build, is actually how do we provide the tools to the data scientists that are building AI algorithms to really understand why did the model make this prediction, and be able to work back from that. And so that's a key part of I think that is holding back the industry, because if you work for a financial company or an insurance company and you need to be able to explain why did we approve this loan or why did we approve this financial transaction versus not, that's something you legally have to do to a regulator or to someone who says you should have approved this and you didn't. If you can't explain it, then you can't use AI in that scenario. And so, I think the tools that we're coming out with this week help with that, and also help us do much more responsible AI for even non-regulated scenarios to make sure people understand why the algorithm is saying what it's doing. I think then the last thing that we're doing that is also really critical is how do we enable you to use a lot of the data models you already have and connect them to AI training? And, I mentioned earlier about things like pre-built apps like Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform and Office 365. And one of the things we've done at Microsoft that it's definitely, if you're not familiar with, it's worth getting more educated about, is to find really this common data model that all of our services inside Microsoft are contributing to. And you can put all that data in a Azure Synapse data lake. And that means that a contact in Office is the same contact that might be in your CRM application with Dynamics 365. And what's nice is it's extensible, and you can then build Power BI apps, you can build Power Apps against it, and you can build .NET apps against it. And that ability to start with a pre-built data model that all your applications are already populating data into is very powerful for building apps, but it's even more powerful for building AI. Because you can now do analytics and you can train models on a schema that is well understood and that is already populated with data that that's running your enterprise. And that will also help you quite a bit in terms of building smarter AI algorithms and be able to kind of apply them into use in a much better way. And so I think that's also going to be key. And that's a place, again, where I think the Microsoft Cloud is going to be very differentiated and very unique in terms of enabling you to do that fast and have kind of an end-to-end both tooling but also trust boundary that you can run it in.
Man.
Yeah, super exciting. Thank you for that, Scott. So you've been doing pretty good on the hot seat, but now it's about to get even hotter. So
okay.
We're getting ready for our rapid fire. So we got 2 minutes on the clock, and we're going to ask you some really personal questions. So first one, if you weren't working at Microsoft, where would you be working? And I see you're kind of in a law library, so I'm going to guess lawyer.
No, I love lawyers, but I definitely don't want to be one. No, this is my office at home. These are actually stamp albums, believe it or not. I don't work in a law library, and I don't think I have any law books in my house. But stamp collecting is a hobby of mine that I do. So these are actually stamp albums. But if I wasn't working at Microsoft and I wasn't in technology, I think I'd want to be a history professor. I'm a big history buff, so I also like to read and study history. That's probably why I like stamps. So so I think I'd be a history professor.
Okay, very, very cool. All right. So this question comes from Kai, and it's pretty near and dear to my heart because I volunteer with a lot of STEM organizations like Black Girls Code. And one of the things that the girls always tell me is that they want your job. So what's the one word of advice that you would give for those that are in high school or middle school trying to get interested in tech?
Good. Oh, one word's hard. I think the thing I would say for both.
It could be more than one word.
Okay. I think both people looking to get into tech, but then also people that are in tech. I think maybe there's maybe 2 or 3 bits of advice I'd give. I think one is try to find the joy in it. I think all of our jobs involve work. That's why it's called work. But if you can find your passion in tech and find whether it's a side project or just something that brings you joy, it could be building a web app or an app to help a community or as part of a nonprofit. But I think just the more you can find the joy and the fun of learning and applying some of the tech skills, I think that's a great motivator to kind of keep doing more. And then related to that, I would say keep learning. I mean, I think one thing about tech that is great about it, but it's also something you just got to go in and recognize is that it's constantly changing. And so I love it because everything in 5 years is old. There's always new ways and new approaches and new technologies and new scenarios. And it's important just to recognize that because otherwise you can feel overwhelmed by it, but you can also, if you can think about it positively, it's something that's going to keep you challenged and it's going to keep you on your toes, which I think can be a fun thing if you think about it that way. And then I just say keep learning, and the more you can do things and the more you can learn, I think the more successful you'll be in this industry. And again, the good news is there's more and more scenarios that are going digital and going tech. And so I think it is a great career and it is a great industry to be in.
Awesome.
Yeah. And don't give up.
Yes, absolutely. Don't give up. One last rapid fire question. So if Microsoft would re-release one kind of technology from the past, what technology would you want that to be?
Ooh, one technology.
DOS.
We could re-release anything.
Don't shoot me.
So that's a tough one. From the past, meaning from Microsoft's past, or
Yeah, or any past.
yeah, the funny thing is, I think with some of the things that we've done recently, with .NET Core and with VS Code and with GitHub, and with Azure in some ways, but especially I think .NET Core, it's nice because we sort of re-released it in some way, something that was incredibly popular, but we did, we made it open source, we made it multi-platform, we made it really lean and efficient, and cleaned it up even more. And so it's in some ways I'd say that's the one that I would have done, and I'm really glad that we did it. So I guess that'd probably be the one that I celebrate the most.
Okay, that's fair enough. But the right answer was Zune. So, sorry. All right, awesome. So now we're going to move on to our next segment around more future type questions. So first one comes from Rohan. It asks,
how about you guys in chat?
It's fair to say
what piece of technology from the last 30 to 40 years would you like to see from Microsoft again?
At work is different from doing so remotely, at least for now. Like Satya pointed out recently, being able to connect with the team in person is an important part of working from office. So what's your vision of how developers will collaborate remotely, but with the same effect as working in person? So doing things like pair programming, code reviews, new hires. How do you envision that working in the future?
Yeah, it is different. And I do think, I think it's important when we think about what that difference will look like. There's both kind of how do we make developers more productive in a remote environment, and that I feel very good about. Specifically with the work we're doing with GitHub, with the work we're doing with VS, and things like live share inside VS, and then things like code spaces, which we talked a lot about both at this event at the GitHub Satellite event 2 weeks ago. And in some ways, I think, especially the last 2 months, we've done some really good work to kind of bring together both GitHub and our Visual Studio family of tools and Azure, in a nice way that you can be incredibly productive standing up an environment of a dev environment. You can do check-ins. You can use that to coordinate your deployment into your cloud. You can do pair programming with live share, and all of that is integrated now and built in some ways inside GitHub and inside VS and inside Azure. And throughout a lot of the demos and the events here, you can kind of see that reflected. I think that is going to enable much greater productivity for developers, and enable also the ability to stand it up in a small team environment, so that you don't need to have like 100 people work to set that up. Our vision is really, you go to GitHub, you sign up. We made GitHub for Teams free, and you can now invite anyone into your team, and you can now have that workflow set up and just have it work with a click of a button. Whether it's your CI/CD, whether it's your code spaces, and your live share and your tools integration. So I think that's good. I think the thing, though, I would say is on a productivity side, I feel great about that. I think the other thing that we're trying to do, and I think the next couple of months, as we're all living with COVID and some real restrictions on travel and being in person, is how do we not just make developers more productive, meaning they can get more done, but also how do we make our lives fun again? And how do we actually don't lose that human element, which isn't just about getting code written faster, but it's also about the social connection that we all as human beings like and want. And that is also, again, something that I feel like we're doing some good work on with GitHub and our VS family of tools in particular. Even subtle things like adopting a pull request model, and the fact that you can add things like emojis and GIFs into the pull request, I think is important in terms of, you can do it for silly reasons, But that silly is kind of, I think, still important. It's part of human life. And so we are trying to have these tools not just feel like they are, have all the enterprise capabilities that people need, but also they do have that human element and they're fun to use. And I do like the fact that both with GitHub in particular, starting with the GitHub logo and, even just if you look at the style, we are trying to make it fun. In addition to actually making you very productive and being enterprise grade. And I think the same is true for VS. And, even some of the touches we've added with live share and some of the other tooling work we're doing, we're trying to make it fun and make it human. And, part of what I even love about Build this week is, I'm in my study at home and you're seeing all of our inside our houses. And, even my infamous slippers and pajama bottoms yesterday in my talk, if you saw at the end, we're all humans and let's celebrate that we're human and let's, we're all going through this together and let's try to make it fun and make sure that we build that human element into the products we deliver is something that I'm very focused on too.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for that, Scott. So, this next question is for my fellow database developers. So it comes from Scott Glass. He asks, will SSIS and database projects get more attention in the near future? They're great feature sets that provide excellent value to the enterprise, but it seems to get left behind at times. Build support, testing, automated deployments, and code reviews.
It's a good question, Phil. I think on the SSIS front, there is work that we're doing. Things like our, for example, SQL database managed instance support inside Azure does support now SSIS projects. I know that was a common ask that we didn't do in the past with our SQL database service. So we are trying to build that in. SSIS does have some requirements that haven't always historically mapped as well in a cloud-based environment, but we definitely recognize there's a huge population of people using SSIS, and so having it be built in and having it be better supported is definitely something the team's focused on. We're also trying to make sure that with things like our data factory support that we've built in natively into Azure Synapse, as well as some of the connector work that we've done with Power BI in particular, we are also trying to make sure that we both integrate with SSIS, but that we also do build in more data movement and more data transformation and manipulation capabilities into the products themselves as well. And also adapt to support not just relational, but actually non-relational scenarios. And so you're going to see us continue to invest along those lines as well. And I think, I've met with the team recently to look at some of that work. And, I think you'll see some good stuff in the year ahead along those lines.
Okay, awesome. So I think we got time for a couple more questions and before our last rapid fire. So the next question comes from Topper. Is the mixed / augmented reality market stalled, do you feel? Where do you see opportunities for mixed and augmented reality in the next few years?
I don't think the mixed or augmented reality market stalled at all, actually. We're seeing more demand than ever, frankly. And our biggest struggle right now is how do we make as many HoloLenses as possible, as fast as possible. I think we're literally trying to ramp up production as fast as possible because the demand has been so high. And I think the reason it's, the demand's been high is both the technology is getting a lot better. And if you look at HoloLens 2, for example, the field of view is much broader and wider. When you are able to put one on your head, it's so much more comfortable than HoloLens 1. And, even touches like, being able to flip up the lens and flip it down makes it very, very useful for a lot of professional scenarios where you occasionally want to use the augmented reality, but you don't necessarily want to always use it. And so this gives you a nice way you can flip it up to get it out of your field of view, which again makes it great for a bunch of use cases. So in general, I'd say I think it's we're seeing great demand there. And I think in this day of COVID, as an example in particular, we are seeing a bunch of use cases where people just can't physically get together or need to be able to provide assistance remotely, and HoloLens has been really an amazing solution to enable that. I'll give you a couple examples. I mentioned one with like Sheba Medical Center in my keynote yesterday, where they need to be able to bring in people from elsewhere around the world that would usually fly to their facility and do in-person training. Now they can instead FedEx HoloLens and do it remotely. We've run into, even as we're standing up new infrastructure inside Azure, as some countries have closed their border and not allowed non-citizens in. Sometimes we have trained people that only know how to install certain pieces of equipment. And what we found is we can actually instead just ship HoloLenses, and then these trained people can work remotely and guide the people on the ground to actually do their task. And what we're finding is not only does it solve the problems that we have temporarily because of COVID, but it's caused us to realize, well, why don't we always do that going forward? Because we can be so much more productive, and that's going to allow us to stand up infrastructure even faster. And so, I do think lots of organizations are kind of doing and going through that realization. And so I think you'll see even more usages in the months and years ahead. I also think, going back to kind of some of the comments earlier about, lessons about tech, is, tech does go through this phase where, you introduce some technology that is, I'll call it pre-chasm, to use there's one methodology people talk about in tech called crossing the chasm is sort of a term. But, you see technology introduced that is used by early adopters, and everyone gets very excited and says, oh, it's going to take over the world. And then, sometimes people, while the technology is growing, people get disillusioned in year 2 or 3 because it's growing, but it hasn't taken over the world entirely yet. And the danger is sometimes you lose interest, and then what happens in 2 years after that is it does take over the world. And if you look at even Microsoft's history, where we were with Windows Mobile and our smartphone business in 2002 or 2003, that was what happened. And similarly, even the tablet computing, we introduced the first Windows tablet computer, I think in 2001 or 2002. And it was the right trend, but it took a couple of years before, the smartphone and the tablet became everywhere. And, and in that case, Microsoft made a mistake around pulling back too early or not investing enough too early because the trend wasn't happening as fast as we thought. And I think in my mind, when I look at HoloLens, which works for me, I get very excited because I see the big trend happening. And our big focus is going to be on, with HoloLens, how do we keep improving the technology? We'll get more and more people using it. And then I definitely expect, probably, my guess is in 2022, that you will start to see very broad usages of mixed reality and augmented reality. And I do think, my goal at Microsoft is to make sure that we are in the right place at that time. And I think the team's doing some really great work there. And I think we will be.
Okay, awesome. So we just got a few seconds left. I got one burning rapid fire question I gotta get out. So this comes from Topper, and we combined 2 questions from Topper and Alan. So do you have any personal projects going on? Like, can we do a PR for you live? And the other follow-up to that, when are you going to write the next version of Nerd Dinner? Is there a Nerd Dinner socially distanced edition coming?
Yeah, it's a good question. In terms of personal projects going on right now, I have a couple projects that I'm working on. One is I'm trying to use the Office PowerPoint extensibility model to build some plugins inside PowerPoint just for some personal use cases. And so that's actually been kind of a side project of mine that I'm using inside Visual Studio and .NET and learning how to do that. So that's one side project. I haven't published the code yet because I'm mostly kind of hacking my way around trying to learn how to make everything work. So I'm not quite sure I'm ready, quite proud yet to share my code there, but maybe at some point I will. And then the next version of Nerd Dinner, for people that don't know, I wrote a book. It's probably in 2008.
2008. Yep.
2008, 2009. I can't remember when it came out. It's maybe January 2009. And so called ASP.NET NBC. And I wrote with Scott Hanselmen and Phil Hack and several others, Rob Connery, this Nerd Dinner project that was a good sample app. I'll say writing a book, that is hard. That sounds deceptively easy, and it's 10 times harder than you think. So I don't right now have any plans to write another book, because having gone through it once, I realized, gosh, that is really tough. But maybe someday I will. I don't know. Not this year. That much I know for sure. But I think Nerd Dinner is still alive. I actually haven't. I need to go check it out.
There's a GitHub repo for it. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a GitHub repo for it, and it was a good sample at the time. And I should go. I think I have the book on my bookshelf. I should go read it tonight and relive old memories there. But hopefully, a lot of people watching it found the book useful and are using ASP.NET MVC and ASP.NET Web API and all the things that came out of it. And really appreciate you using it, and really appreciate you watching this Q&A, and hope to get a chance to talk to you again soon.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We hope you enjoy the rest of Build, and stick around for the Power Platform Key segment coming up next.
Thanks, Labrina.
Do we get a bio break in between?
Thanks, Scott.
All right, we are back. How about
that?
How about that?
That, by the way, that ASP.NET
quick
MVC
bio
book,
break, guys. Be right back.
Purchased early 2009. Literally, there's 4 people on the cover, and we call it the 4 heads, because like you just see their foreheads.
The 4 heads.
The 4-head book. Like they're like you. Someone's got to pull up a picture of this so they can, like, on the Twitters. By the way, use hashtag MSBuild. Put it up there so Donna knows.
So we can see it on this board.
Because
someone
she
go
thinks
do this.
I'm not telling the truth.
I don't believe you.
It's the 4 heads book. It's like literally Scott Hanselmen, Phil Hack, Rob Connery, and of course Scott Guthrie. They're just all like, book smiling. There's a different smile when you're on a book smiling.
I know book smiling, but I've never seen this cover. So
well, they're going to tweet at it, and everyone's going to be like, "See, Seth was right that one time." The cosmic universe aligned.
So
for that,
dear MS Build audience, please find this book cover and tweet it. Because I don't believe him.
It's true.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Build Live Desk, by the way, here in Redmond, Washington. If you're just joining us, we're a few hours into day 2 of our 48-hour stream.
So we heard 2 key segments just now, and I'm not going to lie, this is my favorite time of the day, because we just heard a great key segment by Kevin Scott on the future of stuff.
That's right.
We heard that great Q&A by Scott Guthrie, where he talked a lot about Power Platform and mixed reality, just saying. And now, after this, we're going to go to James Phillips, where he's going to do a giant deep down on all of the things that the goo Scott Guthrie talked about in demo form, so all of you can see it, see what he's talking about. But before I get all hung up on this, Seth, what did you think of that Kevin Scott AI writing Python thing? That was crazy.
I loved every minute of it.
So I'm going to turn this down a little bit. I wanted to go back and address a couple of things that came up in chat with you guys throughout the stream. Carlos, you were talking about some things where, was it going to eliminate junior developers? And I think that's an interesting talking point. So I look back on things like the evolution of next finish wizards, as opposed to compiling your own applications. We had executables and installers that became wizards, and in a weird way that almost reversed in the late 2000s, where the wizards started exposing the PowerShell commandlets and PS1s. So I look at that in a weird way, where they were exposing admins that didn't code to code that eventually we replaced VB scripting with PowerShell and things like that. So is it going to replace junior admins? Maybe. But I think there's still going to need to be some level of architect or admin or operator with human oversight. I hope that makes sense. So does it replace junior developers? Maybe. Does it replace the complete oversight of deploying applications and all of that stuff? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be a wholesale change. What else have you guys been in here talking about? Bring back Microsoft XNA. I don't know that I honestly remember. I remember the name. I don't remember exactly what that was. Yeah, I missed the Zune boat too. Clippy. Clippy would be a good one. Yeah, Blade Star stamp albums, I agree with you, but I look behind me and I've got a Stone Cold Steve Austin foam championship belt. So, you know, and a World of Warcraft poster with Macho Man Randy Savage and a bunch of Funkos. I'm a huge nerd too. Everybody has their fandoms. Everybody has their things they're gonna geek out over, right? I like hardware and audio equipment and video games and wrestling and, you know, all just as goofy as collecting stamps.
Wow. I'm sorry, Scott Hanselmen, but what are you doing right now with that smile?
Book smiles are different.
Book smile.
You know,
wow.
book smiles are different.
I understand, but
it's called the Foreheads book.
Wow.
Because they're foreheads.
Yes.
And there's foreheads.
There's foreheads. Wow.
It's
okay.
like the ultimate dad joke for me.
Oh,
that's
no,
why,
we're back to dad jokes.
Yeah, so that's why I was pretty cool. So we've got about 5 more minutes. I want to tell you a little bit more.
Yes.
We got to talk about this dog robot bringing pizza.
Yeah, okay.
Did you see that?
I did.
Basically, they're like, we did some stuff, and I was like, blah, blah, blah. And I know that stuff because I am an AI guy. But all I heard was, bring you pizza.
Right. Suddenly you thought, my entire life has been worth it.
I feel like the years of research I've done in NLP and computer vision have culminated into finally solving.
Your reason for being.
You guys want to see it?
Something can bring me pizza.
That's not you. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we can have a show
hell
right now. I know
yeah.
we're only 24 hours in, but like what more mic drops can we have? And then the other thing, by the way, here it is. If you want to see Steve Clayton.
Oh, here's the dog pizza thing.
Steve Clayton had the Kevin Scott dog pizza. I think
I'm
we
also
just
a
need to
huge
look
aliens
at it
nerd.
with a moment of silence, at least 30 to 90 seconds. Although that's not good for live, they tell me.
No, so I'm just asking. So let's real talk with the audience. How many of you like this? And how many of you like me are like no?
Are you like no on this?
I'm like no.
How come?
Because I think
they might spill it. I get it.
No.
They might spill the pizza.
They will probably kill us.
No, they're not like that. They don't.
You don't know them.
I do. I
Look
know
at
how
him
they
as
work.
if he
I know how
hangs
they
out
work.
with them.
Listen.
How do you know?
Listen, look, first of all,
do you have them in your house?
Yes, they will not.
He said he had a dog. Is this the dog?
It's a real dog, but they don't think they're not. They're like rocks. But humans, we're really weird. We're like, if we draw a smiley face on a rock, we're like, oh, it's happy. No, it's a rock. AI is a rock. It's basically a bunch of parameters that have been optimized using
Seth, I believe
calculus.
you, but if the robot pizza eats you, it's your own fault.
The key is to eat the robot's pizza.
What?
Just lay on that.
No one understood that point.
No, just eat the robot's pizza.
No one understood this.
No, it was funny.
Okay, all right. So that robot pizza thing. Oh, it's doing something else now.
Yeah,
okay.
She called it during the thing, and it was like, hey, yo.
Oh, okay, no.
Like, think of this, a dog that will not shed in the summer.
I don't like this, y'all.
Yeah.
I am not pro. Okay, so speaking of, I thought the Scott Goo Q&A was awesome.
Oh, man, that was cool.
I just love when the audience asks questions. And it was so fun to hear so many of our community members asking questions. I love the question from Magnus. Hi, Magnus. I love the question around, so should you buy or should you build? And I love Scott, the way he said, well, you do both, right? You do both. It's not an or, it's an and. And I love that he said it's an and because it really is an and. And this concept of do the things that make sense for your company to do because you are a special person, special snowflake for specific things. But for a lot of very generic things, you don't need to remake the same expense tool.
Yeah, and I've been somewhere near Scott Guthrie looking through conference windows, because I've walked by and he's in a meeting and I'm not in those meetings sometimes. But he is very practical.
Yeah.
Like the thing that was cool to me was not only that he showed up in his jammies for the keynote
with the
slippers, but number two, it looks like he's like in this posh law library in his house, and he's like, no, folks, Nah, folks, it's my
No,
stamp collection.
It's my stamp collection. I like this. But what I really liked about his talk was the fact that he said, use Power Apps, use Power Virtual Agents, use Power BI to do all the stuff that's generic and that everyone has to do, and have the people who have the business problem solve their own problem. And when you need to expand it to 100,000 people, use Azure to scale.
There you go.
I loved it.
A couple of reminders
Yes.
as we're heading out because
That's
we're running
right.
out of time.
We're running out of time.
Register at mybill.microsoft.com to
Yes.
get the full
Mhm.
digital experience.
Yes. All right. And now to the most powerful key segment of the day. You heard that? I made a Seth joke. Okay,
Yeah.
Seth joke. So the most powerful key segment of the day, it's time for James Phillips to do a deep dive on Power Platform. He's got a jam-packed session of demos. So it's mixed reality, virtual agents, all the things in 1 hour. So if you want to know what this Power Platform thing that I won't shut up about and Seth really wants to talk about more,
I do secretly.
stay tuned for that.
That is right. It is coming in just about a couple of seconds. Pause.
Pause.
For effect.
Okay, also think about
2.
Robot dog or no robot dog? Go.
I need a Terminator stinger that just goes ba bum bum ba bum ba bum bum ba bum anytime we talk about AI. Cybernetic organism.
We just can't lose to our competition just because we have empty shelves. That's where Power Apps comes into play. That's where Flow comes into play. That's where Power BI comes into play. Is they're helping us, ensure proper execution. They're helping us improve on execution. They're exposing where we're not executing.
And the Power Platform allows us to try so many things at such a higher rate than we ever could before. Take these best practices and the applications that really have legs and get great user adoption and specifically create big business value and scale them globally.
My hope with more educators building their own apps is that we're able to spend more of our time in front of students teaching and more students being able to learn, because everything is either efficient or automatic, or we're creating or the students are creating, and that's really that highest level of learning.
Hopefully I don't get copyright claimed for this track. But oh well, if it happens, it happens.
Hi, welcome to Build 2020 and the Power Platform for Developers section. I'm James Phillips. Today I'm going to be joined by Julie Strauss, Charles Lamanna, and Kim Manis. We're going to talk about the Power Platform and how it can help accelerate and provide agility in the application development process. And it's needed. Experts predict over 500 million new applications will be built in the next 5 years, more than all apps built in the last 40 years combined. Just an enormous opportunity. But that opportunity obviously comes with a huge challenge. There just aren't enough developers to sort of fuel this need for application development. We already have a huge backlog in most organizations, and this opportunity to really transform business through applications and through technology requires that we arm up in some ways to allow us to chip away at this opportunity. Now, the Power Platform, which consists of Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, was not built in a vacuum. It was built specifically to work atop Azure. And if you look across Power BI and the data tools in Azure, Power Apps, Kubernetes, Azure App Service Functions, API Management in Azure, Power Automate with Logic Apps and API Management, all of the Power Platform services have analogs in Azure, and they've all been built to work together. We call it no-cliffs application development. You can start with this low-code, high-productivity set of application development tools in the Power Platform, but you never run out of gas. You've always got the ability to go down and leverage your professional development skills to build building blocks that can then serve those who are assembling applications leveraging the Power Platform. Now, the Power Platform is not just for citizen developers. It's also used by professional developers, for all developers, as we've talked about over the course of today. And so talking about how all of these pieces fit together, how you can start with the Power Platform or with Azure and extend up or down is what we'll cover. Now, over 3.5 million developers each month are using the Power Platform to build applications. This number is growing very quickly right now. In fact, it's accelerating. And these organizations span the globe, span industries. Over 500,000 organizations are leveraging the Power Platform today, and 97% of the Fortune 500 is represented. So this is a platform that has very quickly spanned the globe and provided a very valuable toolkit for those organizations and developers who need to build applications. Now, if there was ever a time when we needed to accelerate application development, needed to increase agility, it's now. We're in a very unusual and a very challenging time with COVID-19. We got a phone call about 4 weeks ago from Swedish, which is a hospital system here in the greater Seattle area, looking for some help building an application to help them respond to the crisis, to track personal protective equipment, to track the number of beds. And we leveraged the Power Platform along with Azure to help them very rapidly, in 3 days, get into production with an application that allowed them to respond to the crisis that we're facing today. Now, we're going to show you over the next sort of 3 demo sessions how Swedish did it, how they accelerated application development, leveraging Power Apps, Power Automate, AI Builder, and a number of services across Azure and Visual Studio. And to show us how they started, I'm going to pass it over to Julie Strauss.
Thank you, James. So I will walk you through the finished app that we built in collaboration with Swedish. The app is designed for frontline workers, in this case nurses, to go and capture scarce resources like bed capacity, staffing, etc. So I will start to report on bed capacity. And I will say this is anonymous data, so it is not data from Swedish. I will go ahead and log into the application, and I will start by capturing the number of beds that I see in the intensive care unit. So I have 40 beds here. I have 22 beds in the acute care. And let's say I have 5 pediatric beds. Let's say that I, for example, entered 5,000. The app has built-in logic that prevents me from ordering new capacity because I'm already at my fully licensed capacity. When we go into how the app was built, we will go through that in more details for how we enabled that. But if I go back and choose the 5 that I really have, you will see I now have the ability to actually request additional beds. So I will say next. Now it knows that I'm going to be ordering these beds. And to help the facility team locate the bed, I'm going to enter all the details for where it's going to be. It will be in my ICU unit on the 2nd floor in room 14. And I can go and choose my bed type. And I will choose a standard bed. Now next, I will go and describe exactly where this bed should be located for installation. But what I actually want to do, I have a very efficient helper here in mixed reality. So using mixed reality, we have a 3-dimensional picture, image of the bed, which I can very easily maneuver around for where I want it to be located. And once I'm happy with the location, I can simply take a snapshot, there you go, and that has been captured. I have very accurately captured where the facility team should be installing the bed when it arrives, and that means an accelerated process. So I can go ahead and submit the order. With that, let's take a look at how this application was built. And I will start here in VS Code. Why? Because while I could build this entire application using no code, I actually opted to collaborate with my team of pro developers. You remember that action I had in my application where I would not be allowed to actually request beds if it was not within my capacity, what I was licensed for? Now, that was built by accessing this legacy system that doesn't have any APIs out of the box. So what I've done here is I've built a custom API. I've built using an Azure function where we're actually going to look up the bed capacity for all of the different hospital facilities and assess whether or not we are allowed to request more beds. And because of the deep integration between Azure and VS Code, I can go directly from within VS and go and create my function app. In here, I can give it a name, new bed capacity, and go ahead. So now that is deploying, and I can go back into Azure where you see this API. More importantly, when I have my API deployed on my Azure function, I want to register that with Azure API management. This will really give me the opportunity to have a central location where I can govern and manage all my APIs. I can set policies and security. But more importantly, I can export this API, which will allow me to automatically generate a custom connector, which allows me to connect to this data seamlessly from within Power Apps and Power Automate. In that process, you get to choose the exact target environment where you want this custom connector to show, and it's giving the name bed capacity. Now I could go ahead and export that. So once it's deployed, I can go back into my experience here, the Maker experience for Power Apps. And as I navigate over to the data sources, you will see how this custom connectors show up here natively as part of anything else and all my other data sources. So as a maker, I don't really know the difference. So let's see what it will look like when I start binding this function into my application. So here you see all the different screens that I have as part of creating this application. And I'll go to my bed capacity screen. So when I click this field, you can see as soon as anything in this field change, so it's on the change command, I can go ahead and I can enter this function. So what it really says is, go and look at my location, look at the licensed capacity that is allowed, and see if I am within my capacity limits. That was the trigger that either allowed me to proceed or stop with ordering additional beds. So that's very simple to do. Now, you also remember the mixed reality, which looked kind of complicated, right? It was super cool. It is actually very simple. All I have to do is navigate to the bed suggestion page, and I can go and insert a code component. So I can choose to view this in mixed reality. And all I have to do is drag and drop that out-of-the-box component. All I have to go now do is bind that to the data source that hold the images of my different beds. Super cool, very simple. I didn't have to write any Python, anything, simple drag and drop. So now you've seen how this mobile application was being used as well as how it was built. So what about the nurses who may not have a mobile device? Very simple. They use pen and paper. So here's the request form. It looks a lot like the application, right? You see the same fields in there. But how do we automate that? That is very simple using AI Builder, which has a form processing model that we can use to extract the key value pair. So here I have a model I have already pre-trained. And you can see how I have the key value pairs here that are ready. And I can capture that. So I can kind of train this model as I go along. And now that will be taken into account. So now you're wondering, how does it get from here? Well, from pen and paper, the nurses put this in an email, and we have an automated flow that extracts any form that is being submitted via email, and it pushes that into AI Builder, where we can do automatically this extraction of the key value pairs. So that is super powerful. What is more powerful is this data is now being pushed into the exact same database where we were reporting with our mobile application. So at this point, whether you reported it using pen and paper, or whether you use the mobile app, the data ends up in that same destination. It's fully automated process. Super cool. So One more step. You remember that second step of the application where I was actually placing the order? For that order to happen, we actually need to enter the data into my legacy order management system. That doesn't have any API, so I can't push it in there. But what I can use here is a UI automation that is available as part of the Power Automate and our robotic process automation capabilities. All I have to do is launch my recorder. We will go into the user experience of this legacy application, and I'll start recording my tasks. I'll say record. I will first start by email, enter the email, and I'll go and search. I'll go to request info. I'll pick the bed type, etc. I don't think I have to continue. You get the gist here. I am walking through the UI. The screen is capturing every mouse movement, any data entry. And when I go back, I should stop my recording. And when I go back into Power Automate, you will see how all of these navigations have actually been entered into the system. So here, for example, you see it's entering the standard bed, etc. So very powerful way for fully automating this end-to-end process. So you've seen how we very easily created a mobile application for the frontline workers to capture and report on bed capacity, and how we used AI Builder and AI models to extract key value pairs and put into the same back end, as well as how we took this UI automation and ensure that we could take these order forms and process them automatically into our legacy order management system. With that, back to you, James.
Thank you, Julie. Now,
Awesome.
A lot of times folks use the Power Platform in Azure to build applications that are used inside of an organization, but frequently you need to extend those applications out to engage the public, partners. And so we're now going to look at how Power Virtual Agents, Power Automate, and our portals capability allows an organization to extend the reach of these applications. And to show how that's done, I'm going to pass it to Charles Lamanna.
Thank you, James. For this next demo, as part of the emergency response solution, we're going to be looking at the emergency response portal, which makes it so different hospitals and healthcare providers in the health network can report information around beds, staff, and personal protective equipment back to the central reporting authority. And all of this was built just in a matter of days as opposed to a matter of weeks or months, using the Power Platform together with pro dev tools like the Azure Bot Framework and T-SQL. So let's dig into it. If we look at the screen here, this is the Power Apps portal. It's a very rich experience for all the different healthcare providers where they can go drill in and report information via forms about things like bed capacity, staff availability, or equipment information. And what's great is that these forms are actually tailored to each individual healthcare provider by using profiles and authentication login that doesn't require them to be inside your Azure Active Directory tenant. And this experience is entirely integrated on top of the Common Data Service.
This
So
really
all the
reminds me of a lot of
information that's
forms we
entered
used to
and recorded
create
is stored in
with
a
Visual
highly
Basic,
secure and highly scalable
Excel,
system. But what's
Access,
really powerful
things
about
like
this portal
that. Just a
is
more
the Power
modern
Virtual
version of
Agent
that is what
chat
this
experience.
feels like.
This makes it possible so that people that are
Without the
interacting
bots,
in the portal don't have to
obviously.
go through training to learn all the different forms. They can just go use a very natural chat-based experience where they can say request emergency staff. This way they don't have to learn about which screen or which UI can go do that. And just by providing my name and my employee ID, as well as looking up that information against the Common Data Service, they can quickly know which healthcare provider I'm requesting assistance from, as well as basically go file it away with the right urgency. In this case, I say I need 10 individual staff to go help out at my healthcare location. I request that staff, and I can even go set the urgency as high. And this will go be recorded inside the Common Data Service and start a business process to go get me the additional support I need. And again, all of this is very powerful and very rich, but what's unique is just how quickly you can build it using the Power Platform. So if I switch over here to the Power Apps portal authoring environment, we can see it's a great WYSIWYG experience to drag and drop on all kinds of different page components and so on. So you can very quickly get that external web presence stood up on top of the Common Data Service. But what's really special and really unique about this solution is what was done with Power Virtual Agent. We can see inside the Power Virtual Agent design surface, it's low code and easy to use, just like everything else in the Power Platform. I can see how I define trigger phrases. I ask questions to the end user to gather their name and their employee ID. And I even call out to Power Automate to go look up employee information. And I'm doing this with built-in connectivity between the Power Platform. And this allows me to use over 350 data connectors inside of Power Automate so that not only can I expose information in my chatbot, but I can also take action and start my business process. And as you go look up all this information, eventually I want to go record a ticket to go get additional help to that healthcare provider. And to create that ticket is where I need to use my coding skills. We can see this item right here, create ticket. This was actually built inside the Azure Bot Framework and then registered with Power Virtual Agent. And it integrates seamlessly inside this low-code design surface area. And the way I create a skill like this is the way you already know how to build Azure Bot Framework skills. I can code this up in C# using the Bot Framework SDK, record different information and different messages, and then go take action inside of code as necessary. And then after I define this bot, I can just go register a manifest, which describes all the different capabilities with things like creating a ticket or looking up the ticket information, all wired up very naturally. And once I have this manifest and built this bot framework skill inside of code, there's a first-class experience inside of Power Virtual Agent to just go register via a manifest URL that bot framework skill. And once you're done, it shows up inside the Power Platform just like any of the out-of-the-box capabilities. So you can very easily mix and match code first, code-centric where it makes sense, and go low-code where that also works. And if I go back to Power Virtual Agent, all of those great capabilities to take action are visible inside that low-code experience, right inside of a simple pop-out. I can see Power Automates, as well as those skills I just showed inside of VS Code from that Azure Bot Framework implementation. Now, one of the great things about Power Virtual Agent is something called tracing. On the left-hand side of the screen, I can actually test this bot out. And as I go enter information, say the same series of steps that I just did on the Power App portal, I can see how the bot brain is running and working all in real time and all very easily and naturally. And this makes it great because I can quickly debug and improve my bots without having to do a big build, publish, recompile step. And I can go focus on delivering business value in a matter of days or hours as opposed to weeks or months. And we can see that all of this runs through very naturally. And that Azure Bot Framework skill I created is just used inside of this debug experience as well. Now, the portal and Power Virtual Agent are storing all of their information inside the Common Data Service. So if I switch over here to Power Apps, we can see all of the entities and tables I defined as part of my solution for the emergency response solution. And if I say filter down to just a few of my custom entities, we can see bed suggestion, hospital employee information, and tickets are all captured here in custom entities I defined with advanced security, great scalability, and great customization.
Yeah.
And most people that have used
like
a
an online access database
from
2002
ultimately hit up against some barriers or walls because you don't quite have the ability to drop into it like you would.
You just don't need an ODBC connector.
But one of our most exciting announcements from the last 2 weeks is the new T-SQL support for the Common Data Service. It's now possible for developers to connect directly to the Common Data Service, see their entity, see their schema, and run T-SQL queries natively.
Ta-da!
So if I zoom in over here, we can see I've actually already connected to a Common Data Service instance. And if I go expand the tables, we can see these are all the same entities that I just saw at the Power Apps portal. And if I even go expand one of these entities or tables, it's all the same schema with the rich definitions that I would have created inside that low-code experience. And this entire end-to-end makes it possible to have a T-SQL endpoint, but all the great Common Data Service productivity benefits. So say if I run a query here to look up the bed capacity across all facilities with a select statement, with where clauses, it all just works very naturally. And I can see all of the information entered as part of the census information for all those locations. But what gets me the most excited about this feature is my ability to go run advanced SQL queries. We can see here that I have the ability to write sum and count based on groups on the region information. And I can even do joins across 4 different SQL tables. So I can build incredibly complex queries that I am used to using and building inside of SQL on top of the Common Data Service. And that's what's so special about the Power Platform, is that where it makes sense, you can always go drop into code. And where it also makes sense, you can go use low code to build applications faster than ever. And if we look at this solution that we built end-to-end throughout this demo, this is an incredibly powerful portal built on top of the Power Apps portal's capability to engage all the different healthcare providers in the region. I then have a chatbot that I built inside a Power Virtual Agent, but also connected to Azure Bot Framework to go engage the healthcare employees inside and outside of my company. And then lastly, I was able to go look at all the information recorded in the portal inside the Common Data Service using a T-SQL interface and SQL Server Management Studio, which I know and love as a developer. And with that, I'll kick it back over to James for the rest of the session.
Thanks so much, Charles. Now, one of the benefits of leveraging the Power Platform, and particularly the Common Data Service, as we've seen used here in this application, is that the data is sitting in a location where you can get lots more value from it. You can analyze that data and really understand. And so we're going to look at how Power BI, Azure Synapse, Power BI Embedded can be leveraged to gain the insight beneath these applications that are built with the Power Platform.
Synapse, I'm very interested in.
I'm going to pass it to Kim Manis.
Thanks, James. As James said, we're going to walk through how Power BI can get insights out of the Common Data Service with all the data coming in from the hospital emergency app. I'm starting off here in Azure Synapse Analytics. Azure Synapse is a limitless analytics portal that brings together enterprise data warehousing and big data analytics. It provides one portal for you to ingest, explore, analyze, and visualize your data. First, I'm going to pull in the data from the hospital emergency app using the same SQL query you saw Charles use earlier. This is built on the T-SQL endpoint on top of the Common Data Service. I can go ahead and pull this data in, get the data in a structure I want, mash it up with observational data, and do all my monitoring and orchestration tasks here. I can also go ahead and work directly with Power BI here in Azure Synapse. I can get a glimpse of what's going on with my staffing, some of the feedback coming in, occupancy rates, and supplies on hand. Now I'm going to jump to Power BI Desktop to do some more analysis. In the current environment, I really need to know what's going on in real time. There's lots of data coming in from the hospital emergency app, and I need to keep up to date. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the page refresh feature. Using the direct query connector to the Common Data Service, you'll see that we're streaming in data as users are submitting it into the app. This gives me a real-time view without having to look in the rearview mirror.
Wow.
Next, I'm going to take a look at our supplies on hand. A few months ago, Power BI introduced the concept of AI visuals. These are normal Power BI visuals with a sprinkling of intelligence. This makes it really easy for users to explore their data without needing to learn complicated machine learning techniques or advanced data modeling. Here, I'm going to start with the decomposition tree. I'm going to go ahead and add the metric to analyze, in this case, supplies on hand. And I'll add a few different categories for things that might help explain it: location, system, region, facility, acuity, and supply. Now, all I need to do is expand what's interesting to me. In this case, I want to know about supplies. And I immediately see that masks with shields are running low. We have about 2 days on hand left. I can expand this further, picking the categories myself, or I can ask Power BI to select the low value that I should be looking at. And in this case, you can see that the OLTC has less than a day left of supply. I can expand this further, and I see that the Snoqualmie region is really running low, so we need to send out some masks with shields to them pretty quickly. And I can slice and dice, play around with the data, and see how my different supplies are doing in my different regions. But I want to go a step further. I want to explore this data by asking questions of it. And in this case, I can use the natural language Q&A visual to ask questions directly. And you'll see immediately I get a number of suggestions, and I can just click on them, and I get a Power BI visual that I can slice and dice and cross-highlight. I can also just type my questions in. So I can type available beds, and I can ask for that by facility. And let's look at facilities with full capacity. And you see here, the red underline means that Q&A didn't detect the phrase full capacity. It doesn't know what I mean. So I can click on this and I can ask to define that phrase so that Q&A will understand it going forward. And now I'm in the Teach Q&A mode. Here, I can select the phrase full capacity and submit that. And now I can teach Q&A using Q&A. So I can say full capacity refers to occupancy percentage is greater than 80%. And I'll get a preview on the right-hand side. And I can go ahead and save this.
Good old if then else.
And when I do that, you'll see that the Q&A visual is going to update and only show me the facilities that are at full capacity. But we're going to take it a step further with natural language. Soon, we'll be introducing a new visual called Smart Narratives. Oftentimes, end users are consuming reports where they don't really understand the data structure, or they need an explanation of what to look at. So I can easily add a text description of what's going on using the Smart Narratives visualization. You'll see I immediately get a description, and if I zoom in on this, you can see that it describes costs and supply requests are both trending up between March 2018 and April 2020. And because this is just a text box, I can go and format it and customize it as I want. I can also write my own analysis. So I can say total costs amounted to, and instead of manually writing this number, I want to make sure it's a dynamic value so that when the data updates, so will this number. So I can use Q&A again to write total cost amount, and I'll save this. And now in my description, the total cost amount is updated and ready to go. And the great thing about these descriptions is not only do they update when the data updates, it updates when you slice and dice within the report. So I can go ahead and select on some of my supplies, and you'll see immediately the data updates, the trend analysis updates, and I get new insights written in text. This is going to be really great for my end users to work with. Now that I've done my analysis, I'm going to jump back to the Power Apps portal to embed my Power BI report, the same one we were working with earlier, here in my application. This means that all my end users using the application can also consume that Power BI content. But I can go a step further using Power BI APIs. In this case, I added the option to export this report to a file so that I can print it or take it with me on the go. So I'm going to go ahead and export this. And you can see here I have my printable view of this report. If you want to learn more about the Power BI embedded APIs, you can check out the Power BI embedded playground. In this experience, you can go in and play around with samples, try the different interactivity options, run the code, and when you're ready, you can just copy it and paste it directly in your application to get started. So we just walked through how we use Power BI, Azure Synapse Analytics, and Power BI Embedded to discover insights from the hospital emergency app built upon the Common Data Service. With the drag and drop easy experiences in Power BI, it's super quick to get started and find insights. But with the Power BI embedded APIs, you can do so much more.
This is obviously pre-recorded and scripted and all of that stuff, so I'm going to talk over it.
We're really excited to see what insights you find.
This feels like a 20 years
build
later
using Power BI
version
and the
of
Power Platform.
Microsoft Access.
Back to you, James.
Crystal
Thank you so
reports
much,
and all
Kim.
of the stuff
and
we
that's
used to use a long
that
time
covers
ago.
the Power Platform and its
But
integration with Azure, giving you the tools
the
you
ability
need
to
to accelerate and make more agile your
apps
application
and
development
chatbots
process.
in line like
if
that.
you want to learn more about the Power Platform, we have 7
Really
other
cool.
sessions, and the URL on the screen will take you to the release notes for our 2020 release Wave 1 features of the Power Platform.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing
Thank you
with
so
that.
much for joining us. I can't wait to see what you build with the Power Platform, and enjoy the rest of Build.
I think that's it, guys. I think we might get Seth and what's her name again. But don't go anywhere. We're going to rap about what we watched today. Not as much content today, admittedly. I think they kind of blew their wad yesterday. I almost have to go back and watch Scott's session all over again with all the little Easter eggs he was dropping in there. Let's let him close out here, then we'll wrap.
Back to the Build Live Desk. I'm Donna Sarkar. Where is my lovely co-host, Seth Juarez, you ask? I don't know. It might have something to do with those robot dogs that he likes so much. So I hope that you had a chance to tune in to James Phillips' live broadcast, hearing all about the Power Platform and everything we're going to keep doing with the Power Platform plus Pro Devs better together. So instead of me just wildly speculating about it for 15 minutes, which I would do, we thought it would be fun to invite Charles Lamanna, one of the speakers, to come and join us. Charles, where are you at?
He was actually really good. Hang on.
There you are.
Hello, Donna.
Hi.
Here in my living room.
Love it. Love it. Safe and sound, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I got my nice little home studio set up. I'm pretty proud of it.
Love it. You might have to change your background to be not white at some point. But yeah, that way, if you have green, you could change to be all sorts of things. So tell us, you, in the middle of build, in the middle of all of the excitement around the keynote and such, yesterday, you all casually bought a company called Soft Motive? Yeah, and Satya kind of dropped that in his keynote, and we're like, wait, what? So can you tell us a little bit about Soft Motive, what they do, and why this is a big deal?
Yep, yeah, so Soft Motive is one of the leading RPA vendors out there. So for over 15 years, they've helped provide rich Windows desktop application automation. And this is really important because it helps complement the very cloud-centric, API, AI-centric Power Automate offering to really give a single solution that can automate anything in any company, anywhere. And what's great is Soft Motive has had this whole idea of being low code for citizen developers for their entire existence. So it's really a perfect fit for the Power Platform.
They've been around 15 years working on low code automation tools. That's wild, right? It's like fate. So RPA, robotic process automation, can you tell us a little bit about why this matters and why it's such an important business, especially for all these legacy apps that exist? Like, you know, many of the tools that we've seen in the studio, I'm like, there's a legacy app. And I always think like, what we need is RPA. So can you share a little bit of those stories?
Yeah. So I'd say there are two really interesting things about RPA. The first is every IT landscape, every enterprise landscape is just full of old, crusty, legacy stuff.
Yes.
And the big problem when we go learn about Kubernetes, we learn about Azure Functions, we learn about all this new exciting technology, but we can't integrate with that legacy system. RPA is an easy way to have a bridge between all your new exciting software and solutions you're building, but still get back into those systems that actually store your customer list or your financial records or some other really important business process data. And the second thing is, really, we've gotten to a point with RPA, with artificial intelligence and machine learning and computer vision, that it's really robust and very strong. So even if you have those legacy apps, you can now build UI automation that will last and be durable. And that wasn't as true 10 years ago where AI wasn't as prevalent.
This is so true. And I think we're going to see so many people, especially now, realize that, oh, there's a huge opportunity here. And by using these tools that I can actually learn quite quickly, I can automate away some of these really manual tasks that I may have at the office that I can't get into right now. And let's figure out a way to do those from home. So that's awesome. Speaking of remote work, our team as a whole, the Power Platform organization, has undergone quite the change in the last 3 months. And our customers have too. Do you want to talk a little bit about just this remote work culture that we've all suddenly adapted and what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, so I think like in general, it's pretty amazing to see how quickly Microsoft and all of our employees have been able to pivot to be remote workers.
Yeah.
And it's interesting watching how like meetings evolve. I mean, at first it's just video conferencing, but now we have like side chats. We have apps that we use to vote on topics during bigger meetings, so we can kind of like upvote the most important questions. But it's just really fascinating to watch the evolution of how meetings work, how collaboration works, how communication works.
Yeah.
And of course, when we see that, we think, what does this mean to the Power Platform? So we're now rethinking a whole bunch of capabilities in Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent to go respond to that different work environment that's happening when people are at home and using things like Teams to communicate in a very different way than they would in person.
What I think is super interesting about this time was how quickly the team has just kind of shifted to respond to the needs of governmental agencies as well as hospitals. The set of demos that you and Julie and co did with James just now was so fascinating because they're all real. This is not made up stuff. And these aren't scenarios that, you know, some PM on our team came up with. They were the hospital saying, we need to figure out how many beds we can fit in this room. Here's a real life situation. So can you tell us a little bit about how mixed reality, which is totally in preview suddenly became an integral part. And that demo that Julie did with mixed reality and AI Builder and the Power App was so fantastic. Can you share a little bit about how mixed reality evolved so fast on our team and where you see it going next?
Yeah, like mixed reality is really fascinating because what we're seeing is people have to respond so quickly to such changing dynamics. I mean, you're putting hospital beds or you're having shelters in place that you never had them before. Mixed reality allows you to go visualize that, mock it out without having to go hire an architect or floor planner. And that's kind of what the reality is of the world right now. You just have to be able to respond and react as quickly as possible. And just mixed reality makes that very possible on that mobile device. In terms of where we're going, one of the really exciting things that we're working on is basically we're saying, how can we make the physical world become more part of the digital world using mixed reality and geospatial understanding? Yeah. So things like being able to use a Power App to go measure dimensions or create 3D models just by pointing and clicking at things. That way you can have a 3D model without having to have something already off the shelf. Or how can you go understand IoT data inside of a Power App in real time? And just this whole completely different way of thinking of apps, of just not being digital only, but also digital and physical at the same time.
I think that is amazing, thinking about how do you make 3D objects without being a 3D expert? How can you actually scan and say, we can translate this into some sort of an app, into some sort of an object we see pulled into a Power App? That just completely changes businesses, right? There's so many retailers right now. People can't go into shops. People can't see this couch. People can't see this object. And I can see that completely changing the game for that industry, as well as manufacturing and all of these industries we hear so much from. So that, of course, the Power Mixed Reality and Power Apps and AI Builder is my favorite thing in the world. But I know your favorite thing in the world is the T-SQL over CDS. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so because CDS, or the Common Data Service, is really the heart of the Power Platform. It's the out-of-the-box backend where you can store all your data, secure it, manage it, scale it, have disaster recovery, all of that good stuff. And for me, I come from a dev background. I mean, I was a developer. I still view myself as a developer. And all the time when I use the Common Data Service, I just like, man, I wish I could get in with T-SQL and just go do some joins, do some queries, do some group by, to really understand the data behind my Power App. And before, you couldn't quite do that. You were stuck in low-code land, kind of, using the visual experience to explore the data. But with T-SQL, I can use literally my favorite tool, I think, in my entire career, which is SQL Server Management Studio, and just have at it. And just that completely changes how you look at Common Data Service. And I think it's one of the best examples of how serious we are about bringing professional developers and IT developers to the Power Platform, the fact that we ship this feature, because business users are not going to write T-SQL. That I promise.
So unless business users decide to become pro devs because they love opening up Visual Studio and doing all this so much, generally they're going to say, what is T-SQL? I remember at MBAS when you announced this, half the audience said, what is T-SQL? And the other half is like, oh, it's the best thing that's ever happened. So I think for devs, especially this audience we're talking to right now, they're like, actually, we live that life. We would love that. That sounds amazing. Yeah. And speaking of more interesting data tools for devs, Azure Synapse and Power BI. That was a fun surprise.
We don't really need to do the whole recap thing here. I want to wrap with you guys so we can get out of here and let you guys go back to your day.
What are your thoughts?
Bear with me 1 second.
Yeah, so I'm
gonna switch things around here a little bit, and we're gonna switch back over to that. They can keep. Let's mute them, and we'll kick some music back on here. All right. All right. So, there we go. Microsoft Build. There are more breakout sessions that you guys can watch throughout the rest of the day. Absolutely. But some quick things I wanted to go over with you guys real quick. Of course, we had day one. We've got that VOD up on the channel as well. Make sure you're subscribed. We're going to be doing a lot more of these going forward. So if you're subscribed, you're going to get the notifications, all that good stuff. Today, the big things that I wrote down that I'm going to be looking more into is the Deep Speed version 2 is being open sourced. And that includes the PyTorch and TensorFlow lessons and models that are going to be part of that to be open sourced, as well as the Onyx framework where they were talking about unsupervised machine learning. I think there's more to know there, and there's some sessions, there's some digital breakouts that I was going to go watch and try to learn some more about what exactly do they mean by unsupervised versus supervised. Is it a approved versus unapproved kind of thing? I think we'll find out. The other big open source announcement was that their Turing language models, the 17 billion that they showed on the graph, is being open sourced. Those Turing language models, massive. They're teaching supercomputers to write code. We all had some Skynet jokes about all of that. Dapper being used over 5G with Project Bonsai to do things like curbside pickups and license plate detection to send the robot dog out with your pizza. All kinds of crazy stuff going on in cooperation with Boston Dynamics and their robotics. It's unfathomable to me where we'll be just 5 years from now when it comes to AI and robotics. It's happening so fast. Really, really happening fast. A good talking point that I want to have in a future talk as well is, will code automations replace humans? We touched on it lightly, spurred by Carlos in the chat. I think you're going to have admins and operators to some extent to keep it human. But I think, yes, there's going to be a level of baseline, low-hanging code that we can teach the computers to fill in the blanks themselves. We've been doing it by creating templates for God knows how many years, and now we're doing frameworks and platforms that are making a lot of that stuff irrelevant. So why not? Why not? That's what it really comes down to for me. So, let's see. Oh, the other big talking point. Jason and I were going back and forth. Azure DevOps versus GitHub. That's a big thing. So I think, Jason, I would highly encourage you to do that series, or at least a series of blog articles. Hell, you just went out and spent thousands on all this new equipment. Start crushing some video content, man. Explain it to us. Teach us, oh wise one. Azure repos and pipelines versus GitHub repos and actions. Azure DevOps on-prem and self-hosted being another leg of that. How do you get into a hybrid model where you have things like Perforce and all of that stuff on-prem? How do you get it up into Azure DevOps? And last but certainly not least, the Power BI and Power Automate stuff that we just got done watching. They're still talking about it right now. I think is very, very cool. I think a 20 years later, more modern version and take on simple web apps that sat on top of ODBC data sources, be they Oracle or SQL or even Microsoft Access, pulling in CDS or CDO from those into spreadsheets, third-party apps like Dynamics, all of the modeling stuff, anything like that. All a big deal, but just a more modern take on it using things like intelligence or BI, bots, all of that. So, it's really loud. I'm gonna turn that down a little bit more. So thank you guys for tuning in again today for this 2-day digital event that we had here with Microsoft Build. These watch parties are a lot of fun for me personally, and I hope they are for you guys as well. I want to bring the community back. And I think doing this in combinations with things like the Discord community that we've started up. And I hope you guys will all come join us. You can find, I'll throw a link to it in the chat right there. You can also find a link to it in the description of the video down below. Come join us. Come find a great group of over 150 core technologists from across all different verticals in that Discord, and it's growing every single day. So I hope you guys will come and join us. Thank you for making these 2 days a raging success. Over 3,000 views already on the day one. The content today was it was a lot less engaging and a lot more sort of demo, and that Scott Guthrie thing went along a little bit too long, that whole Q&A session. So I think they could have done things a little bit better, like what they did with Scott and Kayla and the others in the interactive type of demos and things like that. Q&As you can do anytime as a one-off, but making that part of the keynote of day 2 was, it took a lot of the wind out of the energy out of the room. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed day 2. I certainly did. I've got some digital breakouts to go watch for the rest of the day here in order to fill in the gaps on some of the information I just rattled off. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel here. Give this video a big thumbs up if you had fun today. And tell all your friends, pass the word. But this will be available on demand immediately after the stream today. I just wanted to thank everybody for watching. Follow me on Twitter at DatacenterDude. Subscribe to the channel here. You can find this and much more stuff coming over at DatacenterDude.com. And I think the next one we have on the docket that we're entertaining is in a couple of weeks. We're going to be looking at Cisco Live for future watch parties. So, again, make sure you're subscribed here. You'll get those notifications when we put those up. But we're all in this for the long haul this year. There's going to be a lot of virtual events, a lot of these things coming. So we're going to be doing a lot of these watch parties all throughout 2020 and beyond. So my name's Nick Howell. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. Appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a good rest of the day and a good rest of build. Take care.
Mm-hmm.